Yes, sir.
Commissioner Burke,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Eager,
Here.
Commissioner Gordino,
Present.
Commissioner Inman,
Here.
Commissioner Kehoe,
Here.
Commissioner Liu,
Here.
Commissioner Martinez,
Present.
Commissioner Tavaloni,
Phone system. You're good.
Commissioner Tavaloni.
Yes,
Thank you.
this is
Fair enough.
Joe.
Present.
Senator Bell,
Okay, good to go.
Assemblymember Frazier. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you, Douglas. Could you please read the instructions for today's meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Welcome to the 2020 December virtual CTC meeting. Please note that because this is a two-day meeting, you will need to use a separate link to attend the meeting tomorrow. The links can be found on the first page of the meeting agenda on our website. Please use the questions tab if you have questions about this. The CTC exists to make transportation planning, funding, and policy more understandable and accountable. Our meetings normally take place in diverse locations around the state so that commissioners can see firsthand the variety of infrastructure issues around California. However, containment measures surrounding COVID-19 have required us to adjust to a webinar format. Please bear with us should we encounter any technical challenges. The Commission's meeting agenda is located under the Handouts tab and can be downloaded and saved during this webinar. It can also be found on the Commission's website. Commissioners, should you have any questions or comments during the meeting, please let staff know through the comment tab or via text to the chair or Mitch and wait for the chair to call on you. You can also send inquiries or comments through the questions tab that can be read to the presenters and audience on your behalf. Please mute your microphone except when you intend to speak to minimize outside noise and feedback. I will do my best to call, the chair will do her best to call on you in turn. We hope that you will turn on your camera when speaking if you have one. Because this meeting is not an in-person meeting, every vote will need to be a roll call vote. Staff will group items for votes to help save time. A commissioner should only speak once and only speak when called upon. When called upon, please state your name and briefly make your point. I would please ask that no one speak a second time on any one motion until everyone who wishes to speak has done so a first time. Presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. We hope that you will also turn on your camera during the presentation if you have one. Members of the public, we welcome comments from the public. For participants joining us through the GoToWebinar system, please find the webinar panel located on the right-hand side of your screen. There you will find the audio, questions, and handouts tab. Under the audio tab, attendees will have the choice to listen via the computer or telephone option. Should you prefer computer audio, please ensure the appropriate box is selected. If you choose the phone call option, select the corresponding box and the dial in phone number, access code, and audio pin as directed by the automated system. Please note that if the audio pin is not entered, you will remain in listen-only mode and will be unable to speak to the Commission should you have a comment. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These cannot be shared with other participants as they are registered to a specific attendee. There are two options for participants to provide comments on agenda items. Using the questions tab, type in the agenda item number you are commenting on and your comment. Commission staff will read the comment on your behalf. Alternately, you may click the hand or raise hand icon to indicate you wish to make a comment. You will then be unmuted and called upon to make your comment. Please make sure you state your name and affiliation prior to voicing your remarks. We do encourage you to use the raised hand icon at the beginning of the presentation of the item, as the timing of the electronic system may be delayed. Please do your best to be concise with your comments. Also, please make sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. Since we often have many speakers, we ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on a topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute. The public will not be able to access their camera while making their comments. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to make sure that you can all hear me.
Yeah. I'll grab it.
I apologize for the technical difficulties. Are you able to hear me now? Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you very much for that information. And we are now moving to tab 2 and 3. First is tab 2, the approval of the minutes for October 21st and 22nd. And the second is tab 3, our commissioner meetings for compensation. Do we have a motion?
Martinez?
Move it.
Commissioner Martinez moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Avalone.
Oh.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
second, Commissioner Burke.
Burke.
Thank you very
Burke,
much.
second.
Okay. Now we'll move to tab 4.
We need to call the roll.
Call the roll, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Alvarado,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Eager.
Aye.
Commissioner Guardino,
Aye.
Commissioner Inman,
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe,
Aye.
Commissioner Liu,
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez, Commissioner Tavaloni, Commissioner Tavaloni.
Aye.
Thank you. Chair Norton.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair. The item is approved.
If you all could pause for just 1 second, I'm not getting any input. So, if you could just wait for 1 second while we, adjust my, microphone.
Commissioners, while we get those technical difficulties worked out, I will start item 4, my report to the commission. Later on today's agenda, staff will be presenting SB1 competitive program recommendations for the Solutions for Congested Corridors program, the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, and the Local Partnership Program. These programs represent $2 billion of SB1 funding over 3 years, which will boost the state's economy, create over 100,000 jobs, and help transform our transportation system to become more efficient. The recommended projects will deliver 100 miles of bus rapid transit and priority lanes, 30 new transit stops or stations, and 20 new zero-emission buses, which will make public transportation more accessible, reliable, and cleaner, and move us towards our climate goals. They will also construct new general purpose lanes at choke points where trucks still get stuck trying to move goods, the goods our economy depends on, as well as new high occupancy vehicle and express lanes so people can enjoy shorter commutes and spend more time with their families. Staff worked collaboratively over the last year and a half with local and regional agencies and other stakeholders to develop the criteria for assessing each project using considerations such as congestion reduction, throughput, safety, housing efficiency criteria, community-based outreach, and consideration for low-income and disadvantaged communities. As we all know, this process is highly competitive, and demand for these programs is only twice as much as the funding is available. I know that every project submitted is important to communities throughout California, so I would encourage applicants not receiving funding this cycle to keep applying. Several projects that were not recommended for funding in the initial cycle are being recommended for funding today. Staff is also pleased to present the Commission's 2020 annual report for your consideration later at this meeting. This report contains the Commission's accomplishments over the past year, policy recommendation, program overviews, and priorities looking ahead. If this report is approved at today's meeting, staff will transmit the report to the legislature and administration by December 15th per statute and coordinate a briefing for legislative and administrative staff shortly thereafter. On December 17th, I presented at the Self-Help County Coalition's 2020 virtual Focus on the Future event. Alongside Director Omar Shakin, and High Speed Rail Authority CEO Brian Kelly. I discussed how conducting commission business has changed under COVID-19, introduced our new commissioners, shared renderings of some of the projects included on our staff recommendations, and emphasized the need for transportation funding to augment the reduced revenues we're seeing as a result of COVID-19. Next, I have a handful of staffing updates, including several retirements, 2 new hires, and a promotion. Dawn Chesser, the Commission's Deputy Director of Programming, is retiring after 5 years with the Commission and almost 14 years at Caltrans. Dawn's accomplishments include managing the TCIF program while at Caltrans and implementation of the TCE program and drafting the SB1 accountability and transparency guidelines. She'll be greatly missed. We're in the process of dividing the programming team into 2 units and are working to hire 2 deputies to fill Dawn's shoes. Until then, Teresa Favila is temporarily serving as acting Deputy Director of Programming until December 20th, followed by Matthew Yazgat until the positions are permanently filled. Terry Anderson, the Commission's Chief Engineer, is retiring after 17 years of service at Caltrans and 3 years with the Commission. One of the things I've always tried to do in a job is to leave an organization better off than when I arrived. Terry's time at the Commission epitomizes that. She assembled and mentored a great team that will be a legacy for many years to come. She will be greatly missed. George Spanners, the Commission's attorney, has retired. George has been working on Commission issues since 1992, when he began as a Deputy Attorney General in the Business and Tax section of the Attorney General's office. Since his retirement from the Attorney General's office several years ago, George has worked for the Commission as a retired annuitant. His extensive knowledge and ready availability will be greatly missed. We've been assigned a Deputy Attorney General with whom we can work and are also evaluating the possibility of hiring a retired annuitant attorney. I greatly enjoyed my time working with Dawn, Terry, and George. They will be missed both personally and professionally. Tim Sobelman has been hired as the Commission's Chief Engineer. Tim has almost 30 years of experience in the public and private sectors, including 22 years with Caltrans. Most recently, Tim was the Caltrans Complete Streets Program Manager, responsible for developing the framework and roles and responsibilities for a new office, while also being the lead for the $100 million Complete Street reservation in the 2020 shop. Connie Nakano has been hired as the Commission's Public Information Officer. Connie is a communications executive with more than 20 years experience working in both the public and private sector. She began her career in media production and later moved into marketing and communications. Her experience includes brand identity, creating innovative campaigns, and developing internal and external communications. Laura Pennebaker has been promoted to the Deputy Director for Planning. Laura has spent over a decade working on transportation and land use planning policy. She began her career as a local government land use planner on the Central Coast. In 2012, she joined the Commission's policy team, where she worked on a variety of transportation policy areas, ranging from environmental issues and legislation to developing the regional transportation planning guidelines, as well as performance metrics for the Commission's funding programs. Lastly, I would like to acknowledge Bruce Tatera, the Caltrans Division Chief of Financial Programming. Bruce is retiring after 31 years of state service at Caltrans. Bruce has been a pleasure to work with and has really been an invaluable resource to the Commission in the many roles that he has held at Caltrans. We'll miss working with him. That concludes my report. So we're going to take a minute and try to get this figured out.
How about if I just move forward with the meeting until we get it figured out?
Yes, sir. If I can suggest, we can, Vice Chair Alvarado, we can skip item 5, which is Commissioner reports, and if Vice Chair Alvarado, you can pick us up with tab 6.
Well, if nothing else, we can, if there are no commission reports and the chair wants to speak it, we can always come back to her.
Why don't we plan on going back to the commission reports and just move to item 6, the CalSTA Secretary report.
Okay, go ahead. Mr. Kim, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon, Vice Chair Alvarado, Chair Norton. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, commissioners, commission staff, and members of the public, and happy December 2nd. It is hard to believe we're already in the final month of the year. I'd like to start by saying that today's meeting is a turning point of sorts, because I think we're on the verge of signaling that the state of California is making a substantial commitment to shaping our economic recovery through major investments in clean and equitable infrastructure. And I want to thank commission staff for their diligence in preparing recommendations for $2 billion worth of new transportation projects from 3 programs created by SB1. These projects will create more than 100,000 jobs throughout the state over the next several years. And the proposed recommendations before the commission will improve mobility, accessibility, equity, and environmental sustainability. All of these goals are outlined in the governor's 2 executive orders on climate change, N1919 and N7920. And the executive orders direct CalSTA to leverage discretionary transportation funds to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and mitigate the impacts of climate change. Just a couple highlights. For the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, this year's staff recommendations include several projects that will improve multimodal options to move goods more efficiently. And I think it's also worth noting that all of the projects with a state share of funding also include a regional share allocation, and that stands in contrast to the 2018 project list. It demonstrates the partnerships that Caltrans has developed with regions in advancing projects that are of the highest statewide and regional priority. On the Solutions for Congested Corridors program, the staff recommendations also show a big movement toward multimodal projects compared to what was done in 2018. So this year's recommendations include improvements to transit, walking, and biking. These are clearly the kinds of investments that will encourage greater mode shift and help us meet the state's VMT and GHG goals. And on the local partnership program, the highest ranked proposals are not traditional highway projects, but rather multimodal and complete streets projects that are very much in line with the goals of N1919 and N7920. Also, I think it's well known that the project planning process can take years and even decades. And I do want to mention that some projects that have been on the books for years have been included in the staff recommendations because of their safety and economic benefits. But I think the broader point here is that the project list and our statewide goals clearly demonstrate that we are starting to move away from strictly highway and roadway capacity projects and much more in the direction of transit, rail, active transportation, and complete streets projects. That is a big sea change. And we're going to make even further progress in GHG emissions once the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, also known as CAPDI, is adopted. CAPDI is the overall framework that will help shape cycle 3 of SB1 investments. And throughout this entire process, what I found really encouraging is the great collaboration between the state and regions, a strong sense of partnership to work together and come up with the very best projects that will improve travel and the movement of goods while at the same time reducing environmental impacts. So a big congratulations to all who were involved in submitting proposals and developing recommendations. And I look forward to the commission's deliberations when we get to that part of the meeting. Also want to briefly update you on the LOSAN working group. And just to refresh your memory, we formed the working group back in January at the request of Commissioner Kehoe to look at major challenges facing the LOSAN rail corridor, which, as most of you know, is badly eroding due to sea level rise. We've been meeting for the past 11 months, and we will soon release the working group's final report, which I'd like CalSTA to present to the commission early next year. The working group has brought together federal, state, and local officials, as well as regional transportation agencies, and also representatives from stakeholder organizations and academia. All of us have leveraged our relationships to help raise awareness and bring expertise from across the nation and throughout the state to look at options and come up with recommendations on how best to move forward in addressing these very significant challenges along the LOSAN corridor. When we started the working group back in January, SANDAG and NCTD were seeking $100 million in grants to stabilize the bluffs for the next 30 years. Good news is we have since been able to secure funding for this effort from the Federal Railroad Administration, as well as the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. So we've had really good success lining up necessary funding for bluff stabilization efforts. And that continues today because one of the recommended projects under the TCEP program is for the LOSAN SD Intermodal Improvement Program. Should the commission approve the TCEP recommendations, we will have secured all but $13 million to fully stabilize the Delmar Bluffs. And the final report of the working group will outline options, including congressionally authorized U.S. Army Corps of Engineers construction, which will complete the remaining stabilization work. The working group also looked at the long-term future of the corridor, and what we're doing is setting the stage for regionally led discussions of long-term solutions, which may possibly include realigning the corridor off the bluffs. So I'm really glad to say that much has been accomplished through the working group, and I look forward to discussing the final report with the commission at one of our future meetings. I also want to say a few words about another major priority, and that's border infrastructure along the U.S.-Mexico border. We're so grateful that commission staff is recommending TCEP funding for two significant projects: Otay Mesa East Port of Entry and Calexico East Port of Entry. When it comes to border projects, we've greatly expanded our collaboration with regional and international partners to make sure these projects are well coordinated and can move forward in a timely manner. And just by way of background, during my time with FHWA, I served as chair of the U.S.-Mexico Joint Working Committee on Transportation Planning. So I fully understand the significance of our international partnership with Mexico, which is California's #1 export market. Governor Newsom also acknowledged California's special relationship with Mexico. He signed the Commission on the California's MOU last December. And at that event, he saw to open doors for business and cultural exchanges within a region whose economies, histories, and conventions are inseparable. And it's my personal opinion that the incoming Biden administration will foster an even deeper commitment to strengthening our cultural and commercial ties with Mexico. So this summer, I wrote to the Mexican Secretary of Communications and Transportation, Mr. Jorge Arganis Diaz-Leal, and congratulated him on his recent appointment and offered my support. Secretary Arganis and I, along with our respective teams, have since gotten together virtually to coordinate on Otay Mesa East. In fact, we discussed the formation of a standing binational border infrastructure policy working group that would meet quarterly, track milestones, and resolve any major policy issues in order to advance Otay Mesa East and other border projects. We're also hoping to execute a shared vision agreement for Otay Mesa East It's going to get into details like setting project milestones and establishing a framework for developing toll revenue sharing policies. I think the main point is that these projects will play a critically important role in facilitating international trade, which is clearly one of the keys to economic recovery and growth in the US and Mexico. So there's a lot to look forward to as this binational effort continues in the months and years ahead. Let me briefly turn to the incoming Biden administration, as I know many of you are anticipating that California will now have a strong federal partner in addressing transportation and climate change. I share your anticipation and excitement, and I'm very hopeful, especially since infrastructure is a top priority for the Biden team. And it's also really exciting that the Biden transition team has appointed several prominent Californians to the DOT agency review team, which is also known as the landing team. And that includes our very own Caltrans director, Tokes Omashakin. So big congratulations to Tokes for joining the landing team. Many of you have seen that the Biden campaign developed a very detailed transportation policy agenda that aligns nicely with our priorities and policies. It's a $2 trillion transportation plan, and it includes investments in rail and zero-emission public transportation. The Biden plan also calls for 500,000 EV charging stations and sets a goal that all new American-built buses be zero-emission by 2030. This is clearly in line with California's goal of converting all transit buses to zero-emission by 2040, as well as the governor's directive for all new cars sold in California to be zero-emission by 2035. I also think there's a lot of synergy between the Biden plan and the Transportation Reauthorization Bill that passed the House of Representatives earlier this year, called the Invest in America Act. We were very successful in getting a few high priority provisions included in the House bill. For example, I'm glad to say we secured language that removes the longstanding federal prohibition on commercial activity at highway rest areas. And that's going to make it possible for us to greatly expand the network of EV charging stations along our interstate system, which is key if we are going to increase consumer acceptance and adoption of zero-emission vehicles. So when you combine the Invest in America Act with the incoming administration's desire to advance a robust infrastructure plan with ambitious climate goals, I'm very optimistic about what can happen over the next year. Finally, a few words on COVID-19. We've all seen the recent trend lines, rising cases and rising hospitalizations throughout California, so we continue to be heavily focused on emergency response. Over the past 9 months, we've taken steps to keep our workforces safe, provide essential services, and proactively remove barriers to the supply chain. And in many cases, our departments have acted outside their core business to support the broader economy. A good example of that is a recent executive order that calls on Caltrans to issue temporary encroachment permits that will allow commercial activities to take place on the state highway right-of-way. So businesses that are located along state highways now have the opportunity to expand outdoor dining onto sidewalks and parking areas where it is safe to do so. Now, I fully recognize that outdoor dining has been put on hold in some locations like Los Angeles County. But for those areas of the state where outdoor dining can happen, restaurant owners now have a chance to expand their operations along state highway rights of way. And I think it's a great example of Caltrans' proactive efforts to support restaurants and small businesses that have been hit hard by the pandemic. And so with that, Madam Chair and Vice Chair, that concludes my remarks. Thank you for the time, and I look forward to today's meeting. Thanks.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Are you there, Hillary?
So we're still having a problem with Commissioner Norton's audio. So Vice Chair Alvarado, if you can carry on and we'll try to work it out.
Okay, Commissioner Kehoe?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just want to comment on Secretary Kim's very thorough report. I really appreciate the update every meeting, but I particularly want to thank him for keeping his eye on the ball in Del Mar and leading a team of all the local, state, and even federal agencies that are dealing with a complicated railroad right-of-way through a very populated area. So Secretary Kim, we really appreciate your persistence, and we know it's going to take time, but your leadership has been invaluable.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and appreciate all your leadership and active involvement in bringing everybody together. So really appreciate it.
Any other questions of the Secretary? Then we'll move on down to the CalTrans Director. Cox.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me pretty well?
Yep, very good. Thank you.
Good, good. Thank you, Vice Chair Alvarado. Could I get the slides to get loaded here? There we go. Thank you. Commissioners, Vice Chair Alvarado and Chair Norton, wish we could hear your voice. Secretary Kim and members of the public, thanks for taking the time again to be a part of another CTC meeting. Thanks for all the work that continues to go into delivering and improving the transportation system of the state. Next slide. So I want to continue the tradition of talking about employees that are being of great service to the state. Commissioner Liu got me going back on this again several meetings ago, and I'll try to continue that here. Today, I want to highlight Kevin Young, one of our maintenance supervisors in District 8, as an exceptional employee. And we have many across the department of our nearly 22,000 employees. But Kevin in particular stood out recently based on some things that he did. You know, service is a part of the work that all of us do. It's just ingrained in how we do our business. And sometimes it seems pretty routine and pretty mundane. But when people, the general public, recognizes our efforts, I think that those exceptional efforts, I think it's very much worthwhile to highlight that. And in this case, Kevin really stood tall. One of the users of our transportation system, a lady named Julia, I won't say her last name, but Julia sent me a very long letter, a very kind letter. And in the letter, she described how Kevin helped her. She was using our transportation system. She left her cell phone at the one of our rest areas called the WASHTO rest area down in District 8. And she was on a 10-day journey, a 10-day trip. She was very far into the journey, when she discovered that the phone was missing. Our staff at the district office in District 8, under the leadership of Mike Beauchamp, some of the maintenance staff, that they found the phone, they were able to connect with her, and they gave it to their supervisor, Kevin. Kevin reached out to Julia and said, look, I'll take care of your phone. Don't worry about it. When you come back from your 10-day journey, we'll figure out how to get this to you. Here's my personal cell phone number. Call me if you've got any concerns whatsoever. I'll take care of this. I'll secure it. She was alarmed. She was concerned. She's got her personal information in there, her identity, personal pictures, all these items. Kevin was able to say, no worries. When you come back from your trip, I'll take care of it. She came back from a trip to try to retrieve her phone. They try to link up together. She overshot where she was supposed to meet Kevin by more than 20 miles. Kevin said, no worries, I'll go meet you there. Stay right where you are. Went to go meet her 20 miles across from where she was, gave her her cell phone. And she sent me the kindest of notes about how he was very professional in his work. So I just want to thank Kevin for representing not only Caltrans, but the state in showing the integrity and good leadership and professionalism to assist in this matter. So much kudos to Kevin. Thank you for your service, Kevin. Next slide. So some quick personnel updates. Dennis Agar, some of you are notice very much all these updates already, but real quickly, Dennis Agar is now the District 10 Director. He was in an acting position for about 2 months. Prior to that, Dennis was the maintenance chief, the director of maintenance for the department, but he's gone back to District 10, where he, for 4.5 years, was the District 10 the director. So he's now back in familiar territory, but taking on new expectations and new work for District 10. So congratulations to Dennis in his new role as District 10 Director. Tony Tavares, many of you know Tony very well. He has moved a little further south. He's now the District 7 Director, from one hot location to another very hot location as far as responsibilities and work. But prior to that, again, he was in District 4, where he oversaw 3,500, a staff of roughly 3,500, and more than $2 billion worth of a program. And very excited for him as he heads to the LA area to lead Ventura and LA counties for Caltrans. And next, Dina El-Tawazi is now the acting director for District 4 as Tony vacates that position. She will be the acting director until next year, when we are able to appoint a permanent director for District 4. It's a big responsibility there to lead the Bay Area. So congratulations to Dina as well. Congratulations to all our staff here in leadership roles, making changes to new responsibilities in the department. Next slide. So innovation is one of our top priorities at the department. And for the very first time in our history, we were able to hold an Innovation Expo 2 weeks ago. November 16 and 17, I believe, was when this happened, where we showcased 22 innovations across the department that are ongoing innovations, and really sort of opened the table, opened the conversations across the department to do even more innovation. Much kudos to Dara Wheeler and her team for helping to put this on for the very first time. Not only did we do it for the first time, but we also had to do it in a virtual format, which is something that's not easy to do, as all of us know. Chair Norton is still getting back up to speed as we work through these virtual settings. But a few things to highlight are how we're using unmanned aerial system surveys like this to analyze how to move some of our projects and some of our facilities forward. Next slide. We talked about projects like the Liberty Canyon Wildlife Crossing. That's over the 101. That's over US 101, the Ventura Highway. That's when completed, will be the largest wildlife crossing in the United States. Whenever we can get this done. But this is just another example of how we're involved in very innovative projects across the state. Next slide. And we talked about safety and the importance of safety and some of the innovative approaches we're taking to address safety challenges across the state. Like in this particular graphic, the image on the left, when you're driving, that's what you see. But the image on the right, if you were to turn into this roadway, you would be going the wrong way. And those pavement markings you see will be lit up and more visible to you if you were to turn into this roadway on the right. So on the left, you see if you're traveling in the normal, the regular direction of traffic, that's what you would see. But again, a more innovative approach to highlight and alert motorists that they're going the wrong way is the graphic that you see, the graphic that you see on the right. But again, this was a big part of the Innovation Expo. I want to thank Secretary Kim for his involvement. He gave one of the keynote addresses to the Innovation Expo. I just want to thank him for his time to continue to urge us along on the innovation front as well. Next slide. Also, roughly around the same period, November 16, November 17, roughly 2 weeks ago, as Executive Director Mitch Weiss mentioned, CalTrans was able to participate in the Focus on the Future. The Focus on the Future of 2019 was actually my first experience to meet many of the transportation leaders across the state. And I was glad to participate in it in this 2020 year. Some of the participating agencies were CalSTA, again, Secretary Kim, Undersecretary Cano participated. From Caltrans, myself, Stephen Keck, Jeannie Ward-Waller, from CTC, Executive Director Weiss. High Speed Rail had CEO Kelly, who was also a part of it. But I was glad to be able to share how Caltrans is working through all the challenges and the pandemics that we're facing, the systemic racism issues that we're battling and working our way through, and even things like the wildfires that really hit us hard in this previous wildfire season. So glad and fortunate to be a part of it. I'm looking forward to the 2021 Focus on the Future that will be held in San Francisco. So much kudos to Keith Don and his team who were able to put on again another good Focus on the Future, though in a very challenging virtual format. Next slide. So speaking of innovation, we recently received an award. I've mentioned this project before. We received an award from WASHTO, which is the Western Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, which is a part of AASHTO. Received an award for State Route 162 in Butte County, where we resurfaced a 1,000-foot section of highway using 100% recycled material, and in particular, recycled bottles. This has been a project that hasn't been without its challenges. We've had some issues with it, but people recognize the fact that we're pushing the envelope here and doing something that's never been done. We call this the first plastic highway in the United States. Again, paved a 1,000-foot section of roadway in Butte County with 100% recycled material. So kudos to Amajit Benapal and our construction staff and maintenance staff across the state who were able to help push a project like this along. And congratulations to the team on the award. Next slide. Equity is something we've talked about quite a bit, and much kudos to the CTC staff and commissioners who have embraced this issue as well and not let this issue fall aside. We at Caltrans, I mentioned this before, that I don't want to make this a talking point, but a living point for us. And so one of the things that we decided to do at some point was we said we were going to have conversations about equity. We created a series at Caltrans, and that's what it's called. You can see by the title here, Conversations About Equity, which is we shot 5 videos over the span of about 2 months talking about this issue, where we brought in leaders from across the department to talk about issues around equity. Not only how transportation projects have impacted underserved communities across the state, how it's impacting them today, but also what internally we as a department, what we can do better on the equity front. And one of the very last versions of the series, the 5-part series, was a live forum, and myself, Jim Davis, our Chief Deputy Director, David DeLuce, our Deputy Director for Civil Rights, Shalane Hunter, our Assistant Director for Equal Opportunity, and former Commissioner Tamika Butler, all participated in a live forum. It's one of the best to me of the series, and we got a lot of questions from staff, and I think it really helped us understand how much more work we still have to do in this area. But very good conversation that we had, and I was glad that our teams continue to help push this issue, this important issue along. Next. Safety is, again, of all the priorities we have, that we try not to put them in any the 5 priorities, not to put them in any order of ranking, But if we were to say the most critical of the 5 priorities we have, if we were to say there is one, it is absolutely this issue of safety. We talked about it the last time, how members of the commission recently lost a friend and a loved one. This issue continues to plague us. I want to appeal to members of the commission that all of us in all of our work, that we continue to highlight the importance of this every single day. Recently, in the last month and a half, we've lost 2 contractors on construction sites by errant drivers running off the road and hitting people working for us, working on projects for us. We cannot continue to let this happen. Not only have we lost some of our members of our contracting family, but we also have had multiple serious injuries to Caltrans staff as well. One of them, I'll tell a quick story. One of them was one of our employees in the Bay Area, who recently was doing some work, working on some drainage, working on a drainage project in District 4. While he was working on the site, he was stepping out of his truck to pick up some items when an errant driver ran off the road. And as it was approaching him, our staffer, who I won't say his name here, said he looked to his left and he saw a car coming. And the last thing that went across his mind was, dang, I didn't get to say bye to my children. I didn't get to say bye to my kids, to my family, and this is it. He got run over by the errant driver and he was knocked 20 feet across the highway. Had lacerations everywhere, broken bones all through his body. I think his pelvic was the biggest probably bone that was broken. Rushed to the hospital, and eventually, after some time, was able to get released and is now at home. Some family members are being able to care for him. When I talked to him, I called him just to check on him, and he shared the story with me about how he thought it was he was done, and he didn't get a chance to say bye to his family. And again, brought home the importance of this issue, because that could have been a different story for him. So again, appealing to our transportation community and all our work. Let's continue to highlight this. We have relaunched the Move Over campaign. And again, we'll be doing more to highlight the importance of safety in all of our work. Next slide. Mentioned equity already. The 4P, the equity for Caltrans, and I've talked about this slide before, but before it was 3. Our team recently pulled together and we added a 4th P, and it's planet, and it's connected to the very next slide. Next slide. The importance of talking about planet and its connection to climate challenges that we face. Because of the wildfires that we've had, we know more than 4 million acres burned across the state. We are trying to stabilize in preparation of a wet winter season ahead. We're trying to be proactive and stabilize these slopes and hillsides that can give away after wet weather. And we know what can happen with mudslides and things like that that can completely take away the network and our system and be harmful to the citizens of the state as well. We're putting in place in a proactive form staff and equipment to be prepared for a tough winter season and how to address the issues around climate change that we continue to face. So being proactive there, but as Secretary Kim mentioned prior, efforts like this are important, but what we really have to be focused more on is improving mobility options for people across the state, walking, biking, transit. That's how we can be even more proactive than stabilizing banks like this. Next slide. And finally, I want to thank Bruce Deterra, Executive Director Weiss mentioned this prior. Bruce is, he's one of my He's one of the favorite people I have on our team. He's definitely going to be missed after 31 years, more than 3 decades of service to the state. Bruce's career has really sort of mirrored a lot of the priorities that we have now at Caltrans, especially in the modality arena. He's worked on rail issues, bike issues, planning, you name it, freight. He's worked on all those things, and Bruce has been an absolute joy to work with since I've been here, and we're gonna miss his sense of humor and brilliance, and all the work that he's done for the state. So congratulations to Bruce as he walks off to another career. From what I understand, he can't get enough of the CTC, and he plans to watch future commission meetings. And so please encourage him, if you see him, to not do so, to go and enjoy retirement. So thank you, Bruce. And I'll close on this just quickly, just on COVID-19. Again, we, even though you see me in the office today, we continue to encourage and follow the governor's lead, his message about making sure that we are teleworking and staying as distant as possible. I don't trust my computer system at home. What's happening, Chair Norton? I don't want it to happen from home. So that's why I come in to give public addresses, public meetings. And so we're doing our part, and I encourage everybody else to continue to do the same as well. So again, Chair Norton and Vice Chair Alvarado and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to address you and Caltrans' efforts today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Omashakin. I'm hoping that now, finally, the third time is the charm, and no thanks to 2020 for being the jinx we all hate. I hope that I was going to avoid this by flying up to Sacramento, but I appreciate everyone's patience as we've worked with the audio issues. And thank you for your very thorough presentation. We have some commissioners who wanted to speak on this item, and I would like to recognize them and then make a few comments of my own. First, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Kehoe.
Thank you, Chair Norton, and you're loud and clear, so that sounds good. Director Omashakin, I'll echo the chair's remarks. Very thorough report. Thank you. I want to bring up bridge deaths on the Coronado Bridge in San Diego. And there was a recent suicide. A woman died in the last week or so. I had the opportunity to get an update yesterday from Gustavo Diarda at District 11. So they're on top of it, as is Sandag, but this is a long process. And as usual with our projects, it's got a lot of complications. The Navy vessels have to be clear to pass under the bridge. Rescue first responders have to be accommodated. So I understand that, but I'm wondering if you could work with District 11 and our executive director to see if there's any way to accelerate the project. Right now, it sounds like it's a multi-year plan to develop some safety equipment, whether it's nets or whatever. So that would be my request. And at some point, I'd like you to bring the commission up to date on it when that can be accommodated in our agenda. And I'll ask the chair and our executive director to work on that also.
Thank you, Commissioner Kehoe. Now, I was made aware of your concerns about this and I think the attempted suicides, or unfortunately, possibly a successful suicide over the Thanksgiving weekend. As you mentioned, this is a complicated project. This is not one that we can just go out and do as we wish. We have to work with the federal government on this. We have to work with the U.S. Navy. A lot of complications here, but the bottom line is, if funding can be nailed down, we still think a very good case scenario is that after all the design is done, that we're looking at probably 3 to 4 years from now for this project to be done, which is still a long time. I mean, because a lot can happen within that period. But I've made note of your wanting to have a future report on this, and the need to accelerate as much as possible the work around suicide prevention on this bridge. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gomashkin and Commissioner Kehoe. I'd now like to call on Commissioner Liu.
Thank you, Chair Norton. Director Omashakin, I'd like to ask you about the evictions that took place in El Sereno on the night before Thanksgiving. This has gotten a lot of attention here, and I really am interested to know what role Caltrans had and how the evictions were handled. They were handled by CHP, but I'm wondering if Caltrans could have done this in a way that was more humane, orderly, and peaceful. So if you could start with that, I have some other things I'd like to say too, but if you could describe to people what happened and what you know about it and whether it could have been done in a better manner.
Yeah, so Commissioner Liu, you're probably not gonna like the way I describe this, but I'll give you my best explanation. What I'm not going to do is sort of relitigate what happened. I can't do that. But what I can share with you is, how things, I believe, transpired and our outlook on the issues around homelessness across the state and what Caltrans is doing. So from just briefly, from what I understand, on Wednesday, some people who are activists took over some homes in the 710 region where we were supposed to build a highway, and CHP was called, and they did remove the people that took over the homes. From what I understand, they're not all people who were experiencing homelessness, that they were working for different organizations and sort of took over these homes, and these homes were not in good condition. These were homes that were not habitable, completely homes that were in complete distress, and they removed them. How CHP handled the removal and all the issues around that, that's not really something that I can address from Caltrans, but those individuals were removed because it is government property. It's an illegal act. But to talk about the issues around homelessness in general across the state and what Caltrans is doing, just briefly. So the numbers probably as much as I do. There are conservative estimates that 150,000 people are homeless in the state. 150,000. More than 40,000 of them are just in the city of LA alone. So I understand and get the need to want to do something. Now, these 710 homes, the homes related to it, have been, we've rented them out for, dozens and dozens of years. And some, again, are empty, some are fully occupied. Part of the challenge we've had because we don't want to be in the landlord business at all. Caltrans doesn't. We really believe wholeheartedly that these homes need to be in the hands of NGOs who address or who deal with homelessness and housing issues on a daily basis, or the local government, the city or the county. And we want to get these homes, more than 300 homes, we eventually want to get them into their hands. But there are restrictions that prevent us from being able to hand over these homes to local government and to NGOs. One of them in particular is through the Roberti law that has been around for decades, that doesn't allow us to just hand over these homes or to sell these homes. But part of the challenge that we have, and there are many members of the legislature that are working through this issue. There's a bill called SB 9 that's trying to help us in this process. One of the things we need to do is figure out how some of the restrictions around fair market value can be addressed, because we can't sell these homes or give these homes to individuals at a low rate, because we're supposed to sell them at the rate that the market is calling for it. So we've got lots of challenges through issues like SB 9 that we're trying to work our way through, that we try to get those issues addressed in this past legislative session. We were not successful there. This new legislative session starting in January, we will try to get going again on SB 9 to allow us to offload these homes. But just real quickly, a couple other things I'll add is, I think people don't know how much Caltrans is really, really doing on the homelessness front. Last year alone, we spent more than $120 million on addressing issues related to litter and homelessness. We've worked out lease agreements with more than half a dozen cities across the state to use Caltrans right away to put temporary shelters. That program is running into some issues with the federal government, with federal highways. We're working through those issues, but we've taken countless steps because we know how much of a challenge this is to the state. And even though we're a transportation agency, we can't afford to just sit by and just say, well, that's not our problem. We know we have to step up. We've done that. And look, the incidents that happened on Thanksgiving week were very unfortunate as far as, how it was perceived, some of the removals. But I want people to know that we're committed to addressing the issues around housing and homelessness across the state, and we'll continue to do our part.
Well, I want to thank you for that answer. It's not an answer that I hate. It's not as bad as you thought it might be. I did see on social media today that council member Kevin DeLeon introduced a motion in LA City Council to instruct city housing and other departments to negotiate with Caltrans over the possibility of leasing some of these houses. I was hoping that you might be open to that if that's a possibility. I mean, given the restrictions and everything, I'm not even sure. I had also asked a couple months ago about just a briefing on this issue in El Sereno, especially. But I think your broader take on really the homelessness issue that Caltrans deals with is one that I'm very interested in too. So if we could arrange for something for me to get some report on El Sereno in particular, but homelessness work more generally, I would very much appreciate it. And I think that you probably know this, and obviously you mentioned the legislation, but Senator Durazo, Assemblymember Holden, Supervisor Solis, Councilmember DeLeon are all very concerned about this issue. And I think they would be very receptive to the idea of providing them some sort of update or report or briefing too. So, I guess my question right now is whether you think it might be possible to work with Councilmember DeLeon and the City of Los Angeles on potential lease arrangements for the habitable homes in that area.
Yeah, so again, Commissioner Liu, thank you for your comments and understanding the situation that we're in here. Again, some of these homes are not in habitable condition. If we can get them to that place and we can lease out some of these properties within existing law that allows us to do within existing law, we'll be open to any of these conversations. We truly are. But the place we want to get to is where we're no longer we're no longer the leasing these properties out. We want to just transfer these properties into people who deal with housing issues on a regular, and we're eager to do that. We don't want, Caltrans has no business being a landlord for homes around the 710. We want to transfer these homes. So for a temporary situation, if we can work out something within the law to allow us to lease, we will. But that's not the end goal here. The end goal is to transfer the properties.
Yeah,
so,
I appreciate it and would love to be able to assist in any way I could to get these excess properties off your property list. So I look forward to it and thank you very much. It would be great in the future if this were to repeat itself to perhaps sit down with CHP before anyone goes in there and just try to figure out how to do it. I think, if you do it transparently and openly and work with the groups that have been formed, that are protesting this, it really is a protest. But if you work with them, I think it can be done in a way that is less confrontational. But you'll have to obviously work with CHP in that manner. But thank you, Director.
Thank you, Commissioner Liu. This is a topic on many of our minds. I want to call on Director Weiss, and then I will be calling on Commissioner Martinez and Commissioner Davis for comments.
Yes, I know this is an issue of interest to several commissioners. So we are working with Caltrans to bring the issue specifically related to the 710 properties, the status and the possible path forward back at the January commission meeting, so we have a little more time to focus on it.
Okay. And with that, Commissioner Martinez.
Thank you, Chairwoman Norton and Director Tokes. Thank you for your thorough. I won't go into detail. I think Commissioner Liu articulated a lot of the points I wanted to talk about in regards to homelessness, and in particular in Serrano, actually a few weeks ago. And just for the record, I am appointed by the federal court of David O. Carter, Judge David O. Carter, on the lawsuit on homelessness for the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles. And so I am well aware, and a few weeks ago, I actually was in the neighborhood with Councilmember De Leon, Judge Carter, Assemblymember Santiago, Senator Durazo, and various other people to not just look at the homes across the 710, but also the encampments that are adjacent to the residential areas that are above the overpasses or along the highways. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to mention to you at the last time, but because of the interest of time, I didn't go into it, and I won't either, and maybe we'll have a broader conversation at a later point between the two of us, is that the amount of investments that we are making as it pertains to our roads and our bridges, and when we're talking about homelessness, the amount of encampments and fires that are occurring in the underpasses and overpasses a lot on the highway system. And I've actually seen a tremendous amount. I visited all 15 council districts in the city of Los Angeles, all the overpasses and underpasses. And so I've spent several months with Judge Carter, and what we've seen is a tremendous amount of fires, whether it's on the 101, the underpass, or the 110, people living, and the amount of trash and fires that are occurring, and what the role is of Caltrans ensuring that it partners up with the city. And certainly we've been, the city has been told that you have the opportunity to lease, and there's various properties. One thing that I wanted to talk about in my comments here is the Surplus Land Act. I know the governor had asked every agency as they move forward if there's properties available for the to address homelessness or affordable housing. It would work. Unfortunately, as you stated, the Federal Highways Administration in regards to air rights is a huge problem that you all are trying to deal with, that was brought to our attention as the city, as cities try to address this issue. There are jurisdictional problems, but at the same time, how is it that we can coordinate? As a commissioner, in the amount of investments that we are making in transportation infrastructure, specifically our highways, the amount of fires that are occurring, I think that's a safety hazard issue. And number two, can cause some severe damage. And so I'm not sure how Caltrans is working with different cities and observing what's happening, not just with the encampments, but also with the major fires. I, in particular, in regards to the 110 freeway, I was quite disturbed to see the massive fire and what had occurred there, and eventually would love to have a conversation with you to talk about what we can do to ensure that as we move forward, regardless if Caltrans is able to lease properties or not, but what can we do in regards to safety and ensuring that we minimize those fires in those overpasses and underpasses. Thank you.
Well, Commissioner Martinez, what you just you just mentioned a lot of really important items on this issue, and just want to start off by just quickly. I know we don't have a lot of time. Just thanking you for your work with Judge Carter, local elected officials, council members, and senators, members of the state legislature on this issue. What you just mentioned as far as the safety of people using the system and the infrastructure safety, it's one of our top priorities as it relates to this issue. A bridge completely burnt down, an interstate bridge burnt down in Georgia 2.5 years ago. When I was in the southern part of the United States, knew very much about this because there's homeless activity under the bridge, and the bridge caught fire. A bridge with over 100,000 people on it today, I-85, burnt down because of this. So I'm well aware of the challenges that can arise here. COVID-19 has inhibited us from being able to do homeless encampment clearings like we wanted to do, because the CDC guidelines have essentially stalled, and rightfully so. We don't want to create a super spreader event through trying to clear encampments, so we've backed off. But what's happened is encampments have grown, litter has grown, and those dangerous situations under our infrastructure are being exacerbated by this. But what we did in the meantime, even though CDC said you can't do any clearings, was we've sat down with key members of the administration, and we've said, look, we came up with a priority listing of encampments we need to clear and litter sites that we need to clear. Understanding that COVID is preventing us from doing as much as we want to do. So we have a priority listing now to address these issues. And one of them is what you just described. Situations where explosions may happen under a bridge, where people who are experiencing homelessness are in the right of way, the travel way, that can get hit. It's happening, where cars are coming close to hitting people. People are experiencing homelessness. Those are the priorities, and we have a 5-tier priority, and that's number 1 on the priority list, what you described. So I look forward to that conversation with you in the future. And real quickly, last things, Commissioner Liu, we do have 22 homes that we have worked out a leasing agreement with HACLA, the Housing Authority in the LA area. So we do have 22. So if there are more, we're very much willing to do more leasing agreements. So thank you. I know this has taken up a lot of time, but I do know it's important as well.
It's very important, and so we thank you for your detailed answers. We also have Commissioner Davis who wanted to ask a question.
Thank you, Chairwoman Norton and Director Omashaka, and I echo everybody else's comments about the detail and the thoroughness of your report. Appreciate it. You put up one slide that talked about injuries and fatalities. Unfortunately, just like last month, the gentleman that was killed, I say murdered because somebody used the car as a weapon on Highway 94 in San Diego, was a member of our union. And I just wondered what's the possibility of us trying to put together industry group, association folks, folks at CALTRANS, folks within the labor community to put together some sort of panel to start talking about best practices and what's being done that works in California, what's being done that works in other states to keep these work zones safe. And then to take it one step further, then start requiring use of these things, because these jobs are all awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. And until it's the best practices and the most safe practices are required to be put into the bids by the contractors, there's always going to be an advantage that one employer will have over another. So we need to level that playing field. And so I would be willing to work with somebody within CALTRANS to try to put together this group to have these discussions, because until we fix this, they're not really accidents, they're on purposes. And, you know, we really need to do something so that this stops, so that we're not having another listing of folks who have been killed or maimed on these projects the next time we meet as a commission. So thank you for your time, and just wanted to volunteer that up to you. And if you want to talk offline about how we might get that done, I'd be willing to work with you or somebody on this issue.
Commissioner Davis, thank you for your passion and your care for this issue. We're right there with you on this. Our Chief Deputy Director, Jim Davis, and Mike Keever, our Chief Engineer, recently asked the industry the same question you just asked, the construction industry, asked about what we can do from, you know, whether or not we could do sort of a safety stand down anytime soon to talk about this. And we're doing our part by promoting the move over more, but we'll love to get you more involved in what we're doing. And since you're on the labor side, you may have even more thoughts to share with us, some recommendations on things we can do further. So expect a follow-up from us on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Omashaka. This was a very thorough report. We really appreciate the time you've spent answering our questions, and we look forward to revisiting the 710 and homeless issues in January. to talk further about solutions on a widespread basis throughout the state. Thank you very much for your time. And we'll now move to the commissioner reports. And I want to thank you all for your patience as my audio was having issues. And the first thing I wanted to do in the chairwoman report is to highlight the fact that in December, CTC normally meets in Riverside. And so I wanted to call on Commissioner Tavaloni to talk to us about his normal greeting for us, which would have been in a beautiful setting, but to lead off our commission report for us today.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We turned the lights on for you. I believe it was a week ago, maybe November after Thanksgiving. And we don't have as many lights as we normally have in the past over the last 25 years. But this is going to be a real sad December for me because you all are not able to come down and see all the lights and see what we do here in the little town of Riverside but I did have all the rooms set up. I had dinner set up in the Frank Miller room as we always have. I had breakfast set up for us, but something bigger and nastier and something that I don't like to talk about is the virus that we've got going, but hopefully we'll be able to get out of this, and together we're going to beat it, and we're going to come back to Riverside. We're going to have the dinner and see each other in person and give a big hug to each and every one of us. It's really sad that for me to be on the phone rather than patting somebody on the back or raising a little hell with somebody. But I just want you to know that Riverside has asked me more than one time if we were going to be able to have our meetings here. And it's just, it was tough to say no. Mitch and I have talked back and forth many times. And yes, we were on, and no, we weren't on. But I want to thank you for everything that Commission has done for Riverside and the Inland Empire. And maybe next year you all will be able to come down to Riverside for your meeting. Don't let it slip by, because we'd all love to see you back here again. So thank you so much, and hopefully the good Lord willing, we'll be able to put it all together next year for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. For some of the things that I wanted to highlight in our chairwoman report today, I wanted to first thank Secretary Kim for highlighting the benefits of many of the projects that we're going to be voting on today. We're very proud of the $2 billion in projects and 100,000 new jobs that this will represent. But I wanted to especially call out the staff and the agencies who applied for these projects in the middle of a pandemic. And especially want to talk to our CTC staff and thank you all for the fact that every single program was extended due to COVID-19. All of those application deadlines were extended, but it's worth noting that the deadlines the CTC held for ourselves were not extended. That means that the last couple months have been an incredible time of hard work while many are homeschooling kids and taking care of relatives, as many of us are doing at home. I just wanted to acknowledge the CTC, led by Mitch Weiss, and the staff for the tremendous amount of work you did to make sure that these projects were evaluated thoroughly and ready to be funded on time even though we gave agencies and other applicants the opportunity to spend more time preparing the applications. So thank you very much. I also want to say a happy goodbye and a grateful goodbye for the people who have been working with us, Terry, Don, George, Bruce, and to welcome Tim and Connie and to congratulate Laura on her promotion. I also want to say how much we're looking forward to the Equity Roundtable and listening sessions. When we talk to the Equity Roundtable appointees today, they include former Commissioner Tamika Butler and many others who are giving their time and their talents to help, as Director Omashakin say, make equity not just a talking point, but a living point. And we want to thank you all for your service coming up, and we see that as one of the highlights we're looking forward to in 2021. I also want to highlight a few places in which I was speaking about transportation on behalf of the CTC, including the LA Commotion Conference in November, SCAG and AAA's Go Human webinar, Building Partners and Generating Support, and just yesterday, the Coalition for Clean Air panel with Secretary Kim, the Secretary Blumenfeld of the Cal EPA, and myself, talking about what the future would look like. It is going to be an exciting year. We're looking forward to ending 2020 and moving towards a 2021 now with a partnership with the Biden administration. And what we have all highlighted as one of the biggest opportunities that we have had to be fully cooperative with CalSTA, CalTrans, CARB, HCD, and others. Working together, we have achieved so much this year, and we look forward to working together on the equity hearings and so many of the projects that we're going to be doing this coming year. We want to thank you for a wonderful year, and again, thank you to CTC and staff for your diligence, your hard work, and for making sure that we met our deadlines on time. We want to thank you, and we just appreciate you thoroughly. And I wanted now to ask any other commissioners if there are items that you would like to highlight as part of this end of year report. Okay, well, we have a big agenda. We want to thank you for your time and move on to the items coming up next. Item 8, Vince Mamano talking with the federal highways.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, excellent. So to get us back on schedule, I will be considerably less thorough as Tokes and David were. Thank you, Joe. We're sad that we are all not down in Riverside. I know my wife is particularly sad. We've always enjoyed that trip. And it's always been a good opportunity for everybody to see that portion of the state. They're all throughout the state of California. It's so unique. Every area of the state is unique, and it's always good to see all of the areas. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next year. So real quick, we continue resolution. We talked about this before. December 11th is when you hear about government shutting down. That's the date, December 11th. If the Congress isn't able to enact a continue resolution on the appropriations, Federal Highway will continue to work because we have a FAST Act. That's our authorizing legislation that was extended for the whole year. The continue resolution is what appropriates the funding. So there won't be any funding for projects that will come if we don't get anything done by December 11th. I've heard a couple different proposals. David Kim had mentioned something about the proposal by this current administration and others for infrastructure, but I want to make sure everybody knows that that's not enacted yet. So don't go putting everything in rest areas. Don't go doing all that other stuff that we would like to do or you might want to do. It's not enacted yet. So just be aware of that until we get something official. We're just working under the FAST Act, which goes until the end of this year, and hopefully we'll get something under appropriations by December 11th. There's a notice of proposed rulemaking, just want to make everybody aware of. It's on procedures for considering environmental impact. So that's in the Federal Register. It was posted on November 23rd. The comments are due by December 23rd. So that's something I think people should take a look at. It might impact us. Another thing that's going on right now in California is Caltrans is doing their disparity study. So that's their disparity study that looks at disadvantaged businesses. It's DBE program, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprises in California. This is a critical piece of determining what our DBE goal is going to be for the next several years. So please be involved in that. We're trying to get a good handle on what type of contracting is out there, what type of contracting should be out there, and that type of stuff. So hopefully we have a good handle on that, and we get a good report or a good study on that. Just wanted to hit real quick on innovations. I've loved the discussion on innovations that Tokes had talked about and David had talked about and others there. It struck me as we were going about, I was going to talk about an innovation that Caltrans has that I think will be in one of our future Everyday Counts initiatives in the Federal Highway Administration, their load rating maintenance plan. So they're the first state in the country to have a load rating maintenance plan, which ensures that all bridges or all structures have regularly updated load ratings. And this is the first in the country. So we're looking forward to the rest of the country seeing some of the innovation that we do here in California. There's an Everyday Counts 6 Summit that's going to be coming up. Caltrans is going to be sharing their 360 interactive project review innovation that they've been working with. And then we also talked about the fires and then the concerns about slopes failing and flooding and all that. One of the things that from a previous Everyday Counts initiative that Caltrans took on was kind of predicting slope stabilization. So in the past, in a few of the districts, they're looking at areas where they've actually closed roads prior to slides. And we're at a high rate of accuracy in that they closed the road and then there was a slide. So I want to applaud Caltrans for taking those risks of closing a road for safety. It's one of those areas where you hear Tokes talked about what's first, it's always safety first. And that's a good example of putting safety first in those areas. Lastly, I want to congratulate our California participants on the transition team, the Department of Transportation's transition team. We had 5, I think, from California. Phil Washington from LA Metro is the lead for that. Tokes Omashakan, our director here with Caltrans, is on that. Therese McMillan from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, the MTC out of San Francisco. Patty Monahan from the California Energy Commission, and Austin Brown from UC Davis. So all 5 of them, my understanding, are on that transition team. And a couple of things I just want to make sure people understand. Federal government moves. So we have new administrations regularly. We even have changeover of current administration. So if it's a 2-term, there's changeover in between those 2 terms sometimes. And you know, one of my roles as a member of the senior executive service in the federal government, one of the roles of the senior executive service is a smooth transition of government. So our programs keep moving. We're looking forward to a smooth transition. We appreciate the team. Again, I want to applaud the 5 people from California. That's quite an honor to be on a transition team, I think, to kind of help with the direction of where the new administration moves. Another area I just want to remind people, I'm still here. Even though there might be somebody from California in the White House, please call me first before you call a vice president. So just don't pick up the phone and call the vice president. Give me a shot first. We'll see if we can straighten it out, and then you can call the president later if you need. And that is all I have.
Thank you so much, Vince. It's great knowing that you're going to be a constant no matter how we are moving forward. We really appreciate it. You've always been such a guiding force for us, and we thank you for your great report.
I forgot, and a Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope everybody has a safe and holiday.
Thank you so much. Next up is our regional agencies moderator, Yvonne Garcia.
Good afternoon. I'm Yvonne Garcia with the Butte County Association of Governments. Could everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. At yesterday's statewide RTPA meeting, we were pleasantly informed of the upcoming presentation that you'll hear under tab 17 in a bit regarding economic development and jobs created from SB1. Ditto to Director Wise and Secretary Kim's comments on SB1 and the scheduled approval of over $2 billion in direct transportation projects with indirect benefits to other sectors benefiting all Californians. All RTPAs across the state are appreciative and thankful of the dedication and hard work by all, including Commission and Caltrans staff. This is great news, more so now as we work through this difficult time with COVID. Regarding the Federal Highway Improvement Program, we would like to thank Jose Luis Casares from SACOG for taking on the lead on behalf of the regional agencies to work with Caltrans in exploring and ensuring these federal funds created in a previous Appropriations Act are properly and efficiently programmed and delivered. Some agencies have been apportioned a nominal amount and may lapse next September if not obligated. We are hopeful we can pull resources together where it makes sense and or maybe working with Caltrans to explore if we can exchange these federal funds for state-only dollars to simplify the process and resources to these smaller jurisdictions. Caltrans has been great to work with, and we already have a working group meeting coming up to explore all options. So thank you, Caltrans. Regarding the ITSP, Caltrans has completed a series of 3 workshops on November 12th, the 17th, and concluding yesterday on December 1st. Just simply want to thank Caltrans for being accessible and for presenting regularly at the statewide RTPA meetings to keep us all informed. We look forward to hearing about the summaries and observations from these workshops at our next meeting in January. And real quickly, ditto to FHWA's congratulatory comments on the Biden-Harris U.S. DOT transition team from California. This is great for California, and we simply look forward to future discussions on reauthorization of the FAST Act and any potential stimulus funding opportunities. With that, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing that there's no public comment and no comments from commissioners, we'll move to tab 10. The Ruhr County's Task Force Chair Report from Woodrow Deloria.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chair Norton, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
In true rural fashion, I'm going to save my bandwidth and not have a video displayed, so you'll just hear my voice. So this is Woodrow Deloria, Chair of the Ruhr County's Task Force and with the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. On behalf of the Ruhr County's Task Force, congratulations to Dawn, Terry, George, and Bruce as they embark on the next chapter of their lives. Also, congratulations to Tim, Connie, and Laura, and we look forward to working with all of you over the coming years. The RCTF Ruhr County's Task Force recently met virtually back on November 20th to discuss a number of issues and opportunities facing our 26 rural counties. We received an update of the FSTIP. We discussed telework issues and opportunities that we're all facing right now, and received an update from your amazing staff on the various funding programs, some of which you'll be taking action on today or tomorrow. Many of the rural counties expressed a great deal of gratitude to the Commission for the staff recommendations to fund various rural projects within the Local Partnership Program, the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, and the Solutions for Congested Corridor programs. Programming funding to these projects will provide a great benefit to those rural communities, as well as the economy and quality of life for the broader rural regions which are served by those investments. Rural counties continue to see increased tourism and recreation visitation by those Californians seeking open space and outdoor recreation opportunities during the ongoing pandemic. And while our local economies welcome the influx of visitors, the increase has impacted our local transportation networks, neighborhood streets and roads, and the quality of life, and in some cases severely. So as we transition out of this pandemic toward a renewed prosperity, rural counties will be looking to the Commission and our urban neighbors to help plan for and invest in rural transportation infrastructure. The investments that we make in rural communities not only benefits those rural Californians, but the millions of Californians who rely on these rural interregional transportation facilities to access rural counties and the vast open space, recreation, and natural environments that we offer. So finally, on behalf of the 26 rural counties, I want to acknowledge the CTC staff who have always been supportive to all of our members. Their willingness to work with our staff directly has really been made clear throughout this incredibly disruptive time. So thank you to all of the CTC staff and all of the CTC commissioners And we wish you the happiest of holidays. Stay safe and be well. And that concludes my report.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And seeing that there's no public comment on this item, we will move to tab 11, the Self-Help Counties Coalition Executive Director, Keith Dunn.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Well, Self-Help Counties was pleased to have many participants from the state at our virtual Focus on the Future conference. It was a positive experience, I hope, for all the attendees, and one that went off without too many glitches, so we were very pleased about that. We had the opportunity since our last meeting to meet with Director Omashakin and Secretary Kim and California Department of Tax and Finance Administration to discuss a number of issues, specifically SB 743 and sales tax revenues as they're looking at doing some revisions into 2020. We're going to have follow-up meetings with Director Omashakin in January, and I anticipate Secretary Kim in the near future to talk further about some of the implementation of policies as the impact of self-help counties moving forward. We greatly appreciate our partnership with the department and the CTC, and look forward to a year in which we can continue to meet our funding promises to our constituencies and the infrastructure needs of the state of California. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks.
Thank you so much. Seeing that there's no public comment on this item, we'll move to tab 12, COVID-19 impacts to intercity rail operations. Casey and Kyle.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tab 12 is a presentation from Kyle Gradinger, Division Chief of CalTrans' Division Rail and Mass Transportation. He will be presenting the fiscal year 1920 intercity passenger rail operations, as well as its COVID-19 impacts. Oh, Kyle, I think you're muted.
Kyle, we can't hear you.
You'd think after 8 months I would have this all figured out. Can you hear me now? Thank you. All right. Thank you, Casey. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm pleased to give you an overview of the impacts that the pandemic has had on intercity passenger rail in California. Next slide, please. So first, a quick overview of the 3 intercity passenger rail services in California. The Capital Corridor runs between Sacramento and the Bay Area, and in the last full fiscal year had 1.764 million riders. The San Joaquin serves the Central Valley from Bakersfield to Oakland and has 2 trains a day that connect to Sacramento. San Joaquin also has a robust throughway bus service that connects Bakersfield to LA and other markets across the state. They had over 1 million riders in FY19. The Pacific Surfliner hugs the coast from San Diego to Los Angeles and Santa Barbara with 2 additional trains extended up to San Luis Obispo. It is the highest ridership state-supported corridor in the entire Amtrak national system, with over nearly 2.8 million riders in FY19. And what's noteworthy about all 3 of these corridors is that they are the first, second, and 5th busiest state-supported intercity rail corridors in the entire Amtrak national network. Next slide, please. So in FY19-20, so after several years of ridership growth, there was a slight dip in total ridership, just a few percent in 18-19. But FY19-20 started very well and quickly began to outpace the FY18-19 month-over-month performance. That uptick continued to increase in December, January, and February of this year, and the ridership dip from FY18-19 had been erased by the beginning of March. And in fact, February 2020 saw a nearly 9% ridership increase over February 2019. So we were doing quite well. Next slide, please. But that all changed over the course of a few weeks in March. So work from home and shelter in place orders came quickly as those first reports of COVID-19 community spread rolled in. The Capital Corridor was hit first, with Bay Area travel restrictions being among the first in the entire country. And then within a week or 2, ridership nearly disappeared across all 3 corridors. And by the end of March, ridership had dropped by more than 90%. Next slide, please. So this chart is a stark indicator of how severe that ridership drop was. In case you can't read it, the details, it's January 1st through the beginning of December. So we have ridership daily. It tells several smaller stories as well over the course of the year. April and early May were a time of great uncertainty, and only a bare bones group of riders who were traveling for essential purposes were moving across the system. And that's something we saw echoed to a lesser degree on the highway system as well. By late May, the public began to travel again, and intercity passenger rail ridership was beginning a gradual recovery that did persist until midsummer before it plateaued at that point. The ridership profile of each of the three corridors is unique, and the response during COVID has varied by line. The Capital Corridor is heavily focused on weekday commute and business trips, so it's had the biggest ridership drop, and weekend travel is now, and leisure travel is now its strongest compared to weekday travel in the past. It's leveled off at around 15 to 20% of previous ridership for the past few months. The Pacific Surfliner is a diverse corridor comprised of a big mix of leisure, business, and commute travelers. Their ridership has actually rebounded strongly during some of the traditional holiday travel periods this year, Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day weekend. But consistently, they've been at around 15 to 25% of their previous ridership throughout the pandemic. The San Joaquins is a highlight, actually. It's an essential connection for communities across the state, and it's actually among the best corridors in the entire country in terms of the retained ridership they've had this year. 25 to 40% is where they are, really showing their need and the essential role that the San Joaquin's rail spine plays across California. And finally, as I mentioned, we get the data on a weekly basis. There did not appear to be a measurable Thanksgiving bump this year in ridership last week. And I see that as a positive, especially considering the current COVID surge that we're in and the public health officials' requests that Californians stay home for the holidays. So I'm not going to take that as an indicator of a bad year. I think that's hopefully the public responding to public health needs. Next slide, please. So early on during the pandemic, we knew that revenue, both from the fare box and from sales taxes and other revenue sources, was going to be in decline. So at the state, we directed the joint powers authorities that managed the Amtrak contracts to work with Amtrak to reduce their service to operate less than 60% of the train miles that they operated previously. That's the metric we like to use. The JPAs also made significant reductions to their throughway bus services. And the goal was to reduce service while continuing to provide all week, all day service to meet the various needs of the essential travelers who were still there. Next slide, please. So since the pandemic began, we have been working closely with Amtrak, the Joint Powers Authorities, or JPAs, other state and federal partners, as well as public health officials and researchers to navigate the pandemic by preserving as much service as possible while reducing costs and ensuring passenger and crew safety. Next slide, please. We've been having bi-weekly calls since March with a variety of partners, including Amtrak and the State Amtrak Intercity Passenger Rail Commission, where we've discussed all sorts of topics from emergency funding legislation and national policy to costing and other various working groups. Next slide, please. So with those 75 to 90% drops in ridership and revenue, roughly, we knew that we would need additional funding to continue operating essential service for essential travel this year. The CARES Act delivered that early on. It delivered a much needed financial backstop to Amtrak and the states that support Amtrak corridor service. The CARES Act set aside $239 million for state-supported routes and capped the amount that Amtrak can charge to the states to operate the service at 80% of their federal fiscal year 19 actual billing. That funding remains in place until expended. And in addition, through the efforts of the state, the JPAs, and our partners to reduce costs, we've been able to do that so well, so significantly, that we've actually made the CARES Act funding last all the way into 2021. The initial projections were that they may not end last federal fiscal year. And those savings, in turn, will allow us to roll over some of the FY 2021 state operating support to FY 21-22. And that's going to be critical. That's going to give us cushion while we work with Congress and others for additional relief as the recovery begins. Next slide, please. I'll go over this one quickly for brevity today, but this slide describes some of the cost-saving measures that we have taken. Next slide, please. So in terms of navigating the health and safety impact of the pandemic, in the beginning, it was very difficult to enforce these varying county-level safety requirements about mask mandates on intercity trains and services. Having the statewide rules, that helped immensely, especially the mask order in July, helped crews on board the trains very simply manage what could have been very hotly contested issues with individual travelers. They were able to say, it doesn't matter what county line we just crossed, you need to have a mask on, and that has helped to ensure that the COVID exposure on board trains has been very minimal this summer. Additional CDPH guidance to industry came out over the summer and was welcomed by the JPAs as well as the transit operators. So like everyone during this pandemic, we've become Monday morning epidemiologists. We've all learned a lot more than I ever learned in high school science, but we also know that there's a lot that we still don't know. And we at Caltrans have sought out knowledge from multiple sources, including experts from UC system hospitals and aerosol experts, as well as state, national, and international transit organizations. We've also conducted research on airflow and filtration on board our trains. And we are optimistic that when combined with mask compliance, I cannot reinforce that enough from what I've heard from the experts, our passenger rail fleet can be a very safe location. Global experience has also shown during this pandemic that transmission on board trains and transit vehicles is not a major source of COVID-19 outbreaks when combined with sensible protections like mask wearing and airflow improvements. Next slide, please. All right. So finally, we've enhanced our coordination with the Joint Powers Authorities over the past 8 months, and we brought on additional expertise to improve our services. As part of that, we have coordinated a series of sprint work efforts focused on essential service planning and fleet maintenance and management. The essential service planning has helped us to identify the sweet spot of how much service to run and when to run it so that we can still continue with diminished resources to provide around-the-clock mobility to travelers, improve on-time performance of those trains, and reduce the cost to operate and deliver that service. The fleet maintenance and management sprint recognized that if we wanted to release Amtrak-owned equipment, we needed to improve the availability and reliability of state-owned equipment, rolling stock and trains. We have developed data, process, and procurement tools to better manage fleet availability and maintenance. Next slide, please. So with highly effective vaccines on the horizon, we look forward to maintaining safe and essential intercity rail service for California while preparing to regrow ridership and eventually return to record ridership levels. We also know that the pandemic will leave lasting changes on the way that we travel. So we're continuing to monitor trends closely and coordinate within Caltrans and across state agencies to capitalize on the opportunities to prepare for the future. Next slide, please. First of all, we're going to continue to coordinate with scientists and the resources that we have here in California and nationally with CDC and others so that we can ensure safety on board our trains for the duration of the pandemic. And when we're confident that we're going to be able to deliver coordinated messaging with the JPAs, with transit operators, with tourism entities and other partners, starting first with a how we're keeping you safe if you need to travel message, and then transitioning to a welcome back message when the time is right. Next slide, please. And we've also been monitoring travel trends throughout the pandemic, and we're observing new trends which are likely to remain and old trends which will return. During the pandemic, we've seen that shorter trips of less than 50 miles are being replaced by longer trips, particularly those over 100 miles, as people have taken what I've heard called essential leisure trips to see friends and family, to make essential journeys to seasonal jobs, universities, and the like. If these trends hold, intercity passenger rail could be well positioned to support those longer distance trips in the future. We're also watching how passenger rail is responding to compared to other modes, and find that the rail story is not that dissimilar from the airline industry story. Rail's recovery could mimic that of the airline industry, and so we'll be watching how they react and how they recover business travel in the coming months ahead. And finally, we've seen promising evidence from countries that have taken a strong and effective public health response to the pandemic. It's not just Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, which are known for robust rail and transit, but it's also Anglophone, suburban, car-loving countries like Australia and New Zealand who have held the virus at bay, and we're seeing transit ridership in those countries already back to 75% and higher of pre-pandemic transit use. Next slide, please. And finally, we're excited about our fleet of the future. Not only have we managed to operate our service with a leaner fleet this year, we'll also be introducing state-of-the-art passenger rail cars in early 2021. And these cars, like all of our trains, will be pulled by state-owned locomotives, including 22 EPA Tier 4 locomotives that were manufactured in the last few years right here in Sacramento. Next slide, please. So in summary, this pandemic experience, despite all the harm that it has caused, has been an opportunity for us at Caltrans and with our partners at the JPAs and the Amtrak to improve the service that we provide with enhanced tools and partnerships. We believe the intercity passenger rail in California will come out of this pandemic better than it was when we went in, and we will continue to work toward providing environmentally beneficial, affordable, and equitable mobility for all in California. That concludes my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Seeing no comments from commissioners and no public comment, we will move on to our next item, item 13, state and federal legislative matters, which is an action item. Paul?
Commissioners, tab 13 is an action item. Staff is recommending you approve transmitting the Commission's 2020 annual report to the legislature after final edits are made to reflect the actions at this meeting and to ensure consistency and accuracy in the report. As background, the Commission's annual report is due by December 15th in each year. By statute, the report is to include a summary of the Commission's funding and policy decisions for the prior year, legislative recommendations to improve the transportation system, and a discussion of upcoming policy issues identified to be of concern. The attachment in your book item contains a 4-page summary of the highlights of the annual report. This year, including the actions to be taken later at this meeting, the Commission will have adopted over $22 billion in transportation programs, much of which was made possible thanks to the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017, SB1. The legislative recommendations in the annual report this year focus primarily on addressing funding needs for transportation due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As you've heard at meetings throughout the year, our state transportation revenues are projected to be down $1.9 billion, and our transit agencies are facing an estimated $3.1 billion shortfall. We're highlighting in the report the need for the new Congress and administration to include funding for transportation to make up for these losses in the next stimulus bill. The annual report also identifies 4 policy areas of focus for 2021, which are transportation equity, climate change, telework impacts on transportation, and the recovery of transit. That concludes my remarks. Staff recommends you approve this item.
Thank you very much. And seeing no public comment, do we have a motion?
Chairwoman Norton, I would make a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Liu will second. I do have a brief, very brief comment that Paul, you had corrected the list of commissioners on the full report, but on the summary report, I think we're still missing our ex officio members. So if you could add those on that.
Thank you. With that amendment, Douglas, could you please read the roll?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Burke.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Eager.
Aye.
Commissioner Guardino.
Aye.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Aye.
Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavaloni.
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the item is approved.
Thank you. We are now moved to tab 14, budget and allocation capacity. Paul and Keith.
Commissioners, tab 14 is an information item on budget and allocation capacity. Before I turn it over to Keith, I first wanted to provide an update on staff's work evaluating the need for Garvey bonds for STIP projects. On September 16th, SANDAG had notified the Commission that they will be seeking an advanced STIP allocation, or if that were not possible, the approval of Garvey bonds to accelerate one of their projects. SANDAG's executive director also commented on this at the October Commission meeting. Commission staff contacted all regional agencies to assess the need for Garvey bonds for the STIP. In addition to SANDAG, staff received one other response. After evaluating the current STIP funding capacity and other tools available to accelerate projects, Commission staff, in consultation with Caltrans, have determined it is not necessary to initiate the Garvey bond process at this time. We will continue to monitor the STIP capacity and the need for Garvey bonds, and we'll revisit this issue in the early spring when Caltrans begins to develop the 2022 STIP fund estimate, or sooner if we learn of additional information. Commission staff are also working with Caltrans on some proposed budget bill language to provide additional flexibility for the use of Garvey bonds in the future. And with that, I can take any questions on Garvey bonds, or I will turn it over to Keith for the budget and allocation capacity update.
Seeing no commissioner questions. Keith?
All right. Thank you very much. Am I coming through clearly?
You are.
Great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. As mentioned, my name is Keith Duncan with the Caltrans Division of Budgets, and today I'll be providing the budget and allocation capacity update for you. Next slide, please. To begin, share a brief progress report of Commission activities. As noted on the slide in front of you today, through October, the Commission has allocated $2.6 billion of the available $7 billion across all transportation programs. That represents about 36% allocated through the year. The highlights, the SHOP program is about 57% allocated on 166 projects, STIP about 32% on 51 projects, and solutions for congested corridors about 50%. We're encouraged by looking at today's agenda. There's a little over $550 million for potential allocation of projects, as well as the adoption of the latest cycles of the SB1 competitive program. So we have the opportunity to get more money to work on projects throughout the state. Next slide, please. Today we wanted to provide you a G12 update. The resolution G12 is the delegated authority by the Commission to Caltrans for Caltrans to be able to make adjustments to our project allocations. To be more specific, projects less than $1 million in value, the adjustment could be no more than $200,000. And for projects of $1 million or greater, the adjustment could be no more than $200,000 plus 10% of the allocated value of the project. As part of the delegated authority, Caltrans is required to report regularly to the Commission on the departmental activities. So today is just another one of those reports to meet that commitment. As noted on the slide in front of you, through September, the department has processed 79 adjustments that resulted in a net savings of a little over $47 million across both the SHOP and the STIP. Items of note there in the decreases column, the total decreases of 57 and a net savings of about 83 to $84 million. The reason we highlight that is typically those are resulting of bid savings. Given the current pandemic and the reduced revenue across transportation funding sources, bid savings was anticipated, and through September, we're proud to, or happy to share that we've already seen about $84 million of bid savings across the two programs, primarily in the SHOP. Next slide, please. And speaking of revenue, we wanted to share another revenue update for you. Through October, first 4 months of the fiscal year, as you can see across the 5 primary revenue sources, we are still in line total with projected revenue from the Department of Finance and the Administration. Through the first, on average, we were looking to see about $3.8 billion, and we received a little over $3.8 billion. The 2 items to note, gasoline excise tax revenue is still below current monthly averages, but as previously shared in October, it was expected as part of the assumption and projection. We did expect gas consumption to start the year low and then gradually increase as we progress through the latter months of the fiscal year. So it is still trending lower at this point in time. The other item we wanted to highlight, as mentioned or as brought up by Commissioner Inman back in October, the diesel sales tax. That diesel sales tax is recorded and received on a quarterly basis. So those numbers reflected there are just through September. So we will not get later information until the month of January once we get the second quarter completed. But we do have some information we wanted to share in response to Commissioner Inman's question. So we'll get to that here in a couple slides. But it is very encouraging through October that we are total in line with revenue projections at this point in time. Next slide, please. For sake of brevity, given the time of this afternoon, this slide has just been updated. It's the identical slide of what we've shared with you in the past. 2-year gasoline consumption trends starting back in July of 2018. So you can see the trends as they progress prior to the pandemic taking its hold. And then as you can see, beginning in February, then starting to slide down in March, you can see that incredible dip as we went from March to April. And then as we progress through the end of last fiscal year and into the beginning of this fiscal year, you can see the slight recovery. September, as noted in the slide, was a little higher than August, and then October was a slight dip. But overall, from July through October, there is an upward trend. We're still waiting for November information, so at the January commission meeting, we'll be happy to provide a mid-year look, which will include both November and December for the gasoline excise consumption trends. Next slide, please. For this next slide, this is in response to Commissioner Inman's question about the just projections being a little, were they projections low or were the actual revenues a little higher? Because through the first quarter, the diesel sales tax revenue was about 40% above the first quarter's projected amount. This slide here is intended to show some historical diesel sales tax revenue on a quarterly basis, beginning back in the first quarter of 2018, 2019. The blue chart on the slide represents the total revenue received each quarter. The orange dotted line, the straight line there, is the average revenue across this entire period, which equates to about $232 million. And the green line represents the average per gallon cost of diesel. When it comes to excise tax, typically the excise tax is driven by consumption. As consumption goes up, excise tax revenue goes up. As consumption goes down, excise tax revenue goes down. Diesel sales tax, while it is impacted by consumption, another primary driver is the cost. If for a gallon of diesel fuel, if it is $3.25 and the price were to drop to $2.25, that would result in a 30% drop in revenue. A simple decrease of $1 per gallon. That's for diesel sales tax. We see a lot of the decrease or the increase when it comes to the value. Another reason for the volatility when it comes to excise tax is based on revenue and reporting from our wholesalers, which is a little over 50 from throughout the state. When it comes to diesel sales tax, that's recorded and reported at a retail level, which is the corner gas station. So the hundreds of gas stations from throughout the state, based on the various, I will say, price per gallon and the amount of consumed. That's where a lot of the revenue or the differences, we can say, in the ups and downs. The biggest thing that we wanted to share with you in relation to this slide, in the beginning back in the first quarter of 18-19, you can see the first quarter is typically low. The second, third, and fourth quarter, you see, we'll call it a significant increase. And then again, as we go into the 19-20 year, again, you see first quarter is relatively low as compared to the second, third, and fourth quarter. So as we begin this first quarter, while it is not as low as the first quarters of the prior 2 fiscal years, it's encouraging or kind of opens our eyes to the fact that while the pandemic has impacted our gasoline consumption trends, goods continue to move. Diesel consumption, diesel revenue is still coming in. One of the last highlights we wanted to share of the diesel sales tax revenue that is deposited, that is the 10.5% diesel sales tax is deposited in the public transportation account, and about 72% of that revenue goes to state transit assistance, which includes state rail assistance. So while the diesel sales tax revenue is 40% higher, that's a good news story because that just means we have additional money that's able to go towards state transit and state rail assistance, which is not as deep as a reduction that we had originally anticipated. So we just wanted to make sure we share some of that diesel sales tax background for you. Next slide, please. So just as a brief upcoming events, as December usually is a slowdown period for us in the budget world, it starts picking up. Beginning in early January, the governor will be releasing his proposed budget for the upcoming 21-22 fiscal year. So the next commission meeting will provide you a status update. Included with that proposed budget release will also be updated revenue projections across our 5 transportation revenue sources. So we'll be happy to provide that update to you there as well. Also beginning in January, we'll quarterly kickoff to our fund estimate process. As you may recall, a little over a year ago, the Commission adopted the 2020 fund estimate, which provided funding capacity for both the STIP and the SHOP. And that was based on pre-COVID revenue levels. So now with the new revised or updated revenue projections coming out in January, we'll start the kickoff for the 2022 fund estimate. And then sliding into March, we'll share with you the draft assumptions. That the assumptions play a critical role in that fund estimate development. Next slide, please. Okay. With that, I'd like to thank Commission staff and Caltrans financial programming staff for their help with the presentation today. And with that, I'll open to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you so much. We have no public comments on this item. Commissioners, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for your report, and we'll move to tab 15, item 15, the impacts of COVID-19 on tolling. Julia and Mark.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tab 15 is an information item. The Commission has approved 3 tolling facilities since the passage of AB 194, Fraser Statutes of 2015, which gave the Commission permanent responsibility to approve tolling facilities in California. The outbreak of COVID-19 and related restrictions have led to a significant decrease in vehicle miles traveled and tolling revenues. These revenue impacts may affect how tolling authorities prioritize current and future projects, as well as grant opportunities. Mark Linsenmayer, Deputy Executive Director of Congestion Reduction at LA Metro, will provide an update on the impacts of COVID-19 on tolling revenues in Los Angeles, projects that have been affected, and how tolling revenues are prioritized. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you, Chair Norton and Commissioners, for listening to my presentation. I'll set a warning up now that it gets into the weeds, but I'll try to be as brief and succinct as possible to make sure we're moving along. I can go ahead and start on the next slide. So this is mostly talking about the 2 express toll lanes in Los Angeles County on Interstate 110, Interstate 10, north, south, east, west, respectively. And you're looking at the impacts that we've experienced from COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic. Obviously, we've had tremendous impacts as this chart starts to address, similar to the intercity rail charts. We had really a significant drop, not only in the traffic volume starting in mid to late March and early April, but also even more so on the revenue side of it. Our traffic volumes in the express lanes were down between 70 and 80%. The revenue tied to that was down between 80 and 90%. Since that time, we've had minor recovery with some different, blips on our radar on this. But typically our traffic has been recovering between 1% and 2% per week. Our revenue is a little bit slower than that, and it started to plateau back in, say, August. Not really budging a whole lot over the sort of baseline that we've experienced. So right now our traffic volumes are between 40 and 50% below what they would be normally, and our revenue is somewhere in the 60 to 70% below normal for what we would anticipate through this time. So everything's sort of stabilized now. Obviously, the latest surge in November is likely even dropped those numbers a little bit from the right side of this chart. Our operations, at least in response to how we move the express lanes, have been fairly stable. We have had a couple, hiccups in that process in terms of keeping our 2 facilities, our service centers open. Obviously, the safer at home orders and some of the impacts we've seen from that. We closed our doors to those facilities, so no walk-in visitors, and sent our service agents home with what we call thin clients, which are really just a laptop and a wireless modem to take and receive calls for customers during that time. For us, it's a little bit limited because they can certainly respond to customer inquiries. but we can't really do any other revenue services or credit card replenishments on account. So we try to minimize the time that we do send all of our agents home and try to keep our service centers open. And again, in the sake of time, I'll say that we've talked to other agencies within the state of California, and certainly roadways that have dynamic pricing similar to the express lanes in Los Angeles County have seen similar curves on both the traffic and revenue as we're showing here. I think congestion in Los Angeles County is rightfully notorious about how much congestion we have. So we have seen a bigger bounce back than some of our peer agency facilities in the state. I think from what I learned at my CTOC subcommittee meeting yesterday, the Toll Operators Committee, the Express Lane Subcommittee, is that I think the facilities that are more toll-based and not necessarily dynamically priced have recovered a little. So some of the bridges and the toll roads in Orange County have a better looking curve on the revenue side than we do. But we certainly see it stabilized. For Los Angeles County, we're able to continue to do what we need to do at an operational level that we're comfortable with, both in terms of traffic volume and revenues. We do see from discussing with our consultants, advisors, the various rating agencies that examine express lanes in California and across the country, that they expect the economy to pick back up in the first half of 2021, and we'll see greater increases in traffic in 2021. I would think this is mostly tied to the efficacy of the vaccine that we all hope is imminent. But certainly once we see that take place and some of the businesses opening up that we rely on for our commuting volumes being back in place, that we'll see the traffic returning as well. And I was going to talk a little bit more about how the main line really dictates the traffic volume on the express lanes. But I noticed in one of my bullets at the bottom that my analogy is to talk about the derivative process of equity funds relative to express lanes, and that seems way more complicated than I think we need to go into. So I'll skip over that, but I'm certainly happy to talk about how the impact of our express lane revenues are set up by the amount of volume and traffic in the general purpose lanes. So we've certainly seen the significant impacts, but we're moving forward on that. I'd like to talk a little bit on the next slide about some of the projects and programs that we're working on at LA Metro. I think I talked a little bit about our operations center and how we had to have it closed, at least in terms of visitors. We did also reduce our tolls to minimum tolling, which also had an outsized impact on our revenues. We've since returned to dynamic pricing. We also paused our violation escalations, which weren't included in that chart. But obviously, when we're not collecting on violations, it also has a revenue impact. But for the most part, our operations within the express lanes are continuing on a day-to-day basis. I just want to also note, I know we have a discussion later in the meeting about Interstate 105 and our application for SCCP. So I won't belabor that, other than to say that we're very proud of the work that not only the express lane staff was doing this summer, but also CalTrans staff on finalizing the draft environmental document, holding a virtual public meeting for CEQA as part of that, which I thought was a unique opportunity, I'll call it, to do that within this pandemic environment. And we're working forward with CalTrans to identify the final LPA, the locally preferred alternative on that, perhaps as soon as today, but hopefully by the end of the year. Other projects within our portfolio include the environmental process on Interstate 405, which in Los Angeles County we refer to as the Sepulveda Pass section of 105, sort of north of Interstate 10. We'd started the environmental process on that, and sort of paused it during the initial pieces of the outbreak, as we were concerned about not only the safety of everybody working on the project, but also the agency resources and available funding for it. We've since resumed that work and hope to have it back on track and timing wise to open for the 2028 LA Olympics. So also hopefully back to the CTC at some point in the near future to discuss our AB 194 application. I won't get too far ahead on that one. Likewise with Interstate 10, we're continuing to move forward on that. We're doing some additional planning and environmental work on the 110, and the other projects close to my heart are certainly our network PSR, which again is to expand the express lanes network in Los Angeles County through our Tier 1 program. So a series of corridors, including some of the ones on this slide. And that should, again, hopefully be finalized in early 2021. Next slide. Talk a little bit about our transit reinvestment and our net toll revenue grant program. And as Julia mentioned in sort of the introduction, we continue to reinvest in multimodal activities along our corridor. We've continued to fund the net toll revenue grant programs as the reimbursements come to us and the invoices come to us. I've gotten a couple invoices since I've been on the call this afternoon. But as you can see from the 2 rounds that we've started in 2014 and 2016, totaling just shy of $50 million, we're about somewhere short of 50% complete on those projects. But we continue to pay those out. We haven't really noticed a significant slowdown from the locals. They may have deferred some of their projects as the rest of their funding on these projects may have been impacted, but we've seen a pretty steady flow of invoices and receipts from all of these different grant programs. And so we continue to not only pay these, but are looking forward to additional rounds of net toll revenue grants in the future. So we really haven't seen any delay or undue interruption as a result of the pandemic on this side of it. As you know, many construction projects have stayed on track during the pandemic. And I think on the final slide is the next one. And this just talks a little bit about where we're putting a lot of that net toll revenue funding. Obviously, 40% of that 50 million we try to target to transit projects along the corridors, the purchase of new vehicles and fare subsidies that support multimodal enhancements, including things like system connectivity and active transportation, where another 40% of our funds go to support those projects. And the sort of final 20% go to roadway improvement projects that we provide to Caltrans to help us with some of those, including incident management, arterial signal sync projects, and intelligent transportation systems. And our group at Metro is responsible for the regional integration of intelligent transportation systems. So we're happy to provide that funding to support our programs in Caltrans as well. And that's all I have for a presentation. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions, and I'll stick around for the 105 discussion as well.
Thank you very much. We do have one public comment on this item.
We have Kenneth Cow. And you're now muted. Please speak.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. This is Kenneth Cow with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, also representing our sister agency, the Bay Area Toll Authority. I wanted to briefly add on to some of our Bay Area experience with tolling and how it's been impacted by COVID-19. I think it's been very closely mirrored, our experience in the Bay Area to Los Angeles on our express lanes that we operate on Interstate 680 and Contra Costa. Our traffic volume went down by 55% immediately after the shelter in place. And we also, from March until June, we actually stopped collecting tolls to help free up resources for the CHP and to reduce some because of the low demand there. Since then, the traffic has rebounded. We're at about 85%, I believe, of our pre-COVID levels in terms of traffic, but our revenues, toll collection revenues on that express lane has actually decreased because there's less congestion, and we are a dynamic pricing express lane there. So our toll revenue has definitely decreased a lot. And what that means for us is that we'll have to subsidize our operation costs a little bit more from our toll revenues, and it will result in a deferral of some future toll system replacement and rehabilitation that we have coming up. In the Bay Area, as you know, we also have our toll bridges, and since COVID in March and the shelter in place, we had initial drop of traffic of 50%, which is pretty substantial. That has gradually increased, and now we're down about 20% from pre-COVID levels, which is not bad. Interestingly enough, our southern bridges south of the Bay Bridge have decreased more, 30% from pre-COVID levels, probably because a lot of those tech industries are allowing their employees to work from home more often. On our northern bridges, the traffic has rebounded a lot more. We're only down between 10 and 15%. The toll revenues on that, we're down about 75% from 2019 levels. And in terms of prioritization, we're making sure that we're continuing to meet all of our financial obligations, and that includes maintaining and operating our bridges, maintaining and paying all debt service, and complying with all debt service coverage requirements. So I think, again, just to give you another data point of the substantial impacts COVID-19 has had on tolling here in the Bay Area as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions from my fellow commissioners, so we will thank you for this item, and we'll move on to tab 16, and that is the Commission Equity Advisory Roundtable membership. Bridget? We're awaiting Bridget to sign on.
Okay, I think you should be able to hear me. I apologize for the delay.
We can hear you now.
Commissioners, thank you. Commissioners, tab 16 is an action item to approve staff recommendations for the Commission's Equity Advisory Roundtable membership and delegate staff to finalize remaining membership. The proposed list of Roundtable members can be found in Attachment A of the book item. Roundtable membership was developed in consultation with key stakeholders and reflects subject matter expertise areas the Commission approved at its August 2020 meeting. In addition, the list aims to balance geographic diversity and includes confirmed participants for all major areas of California, including the North State, Sacramento area, San Francisco Bay Area, Sierra region, San Joaquin Valley, Central Coast, Los Angeles area, Inland Empire, and San Diego area. We have 16 confirmed Roundtable members and are working to finalize participants for 2 remaining membership areas, which are disability rights and Native American tribal governments. Our goal is to have approximately 20 members on the final Roundtable. We do have one update to the member list in Attachment A. We had identified Jay Chang as the representative from the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, and I would like to amend this to reflect that Rodney Fong, President and CEO of the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce, will serve as the lead contact for this effort, and Mr. Chang will serve as his alternate. Next, I wanted to share with you all that we have received a commitment from the Resources Legacy Fund to provide limited financial support for the Roundtable. We look forward to providing Roundtable members with more details soon on how to request needs-based grant assistance if desired. We are incredibly grateful to the Resources Legacy Fund for their support of this effort. With your approval of this item, staff will finalize remaining memberships and move forward with scheduling the virtual Roundtable meetings to begin early next year. That concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Seeing that we have no public comment, commissioners, do you have any questions for Bridget? My only question is when you anticipate the first meeting of the roundtable to take place, Bridget?
Sure. So staff is looking to start scheduling these meetings directly following your approval today. So it depends a little bit on commissioner schedules, agency leadership schedules, and the schedules of the roundtable members, but we're aiming for January or February of next year.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. This is an action item, and so I wanted to take a motion for this action item.
Chair Norton, can we maybe get a letter to the Resources Legacy Fund from the commission, or maybe from you, thanking them for supporting the effort to be able to compensate the participants in this?
Certainly, that's a great suggestion, Commissioner Liu.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, commissioners, could we take a motion on this item?
I'm prepared to second when we get a motion. Or I can move the item if you like.
That'd be great, Commissioner Kehoe. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Alvarado seconds.
Thank you very much. Douglas, could you please read the roll?
Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes.
Commissioner Burke.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Eager.
Tobacco left wing. This is apparently the
Commissioner
exact
Guardino.
word city used.
Aye.
Tobacco left wing.
Commissioner Inman.
Aye.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Aye.
Commissioner Liu.
Aye.
Commissioner Martinez.
Aye.
Commissioner Tavaloni.
Aye.
Chair Norton.
Aye.
Chair, the item is approved.
Thank you. And again, thanks to all of the nominees for your service. With that, we're going to move to tab 17. And Laura, would you please introduce your colleagues for this item?
Absolutely. So commissioners, this is an informational item. Kiana Valentine, Executive Director of Transportation California, Michael Quigley, Executive Director of the California Alliance for Jobs, and John Hakel, Executive Director of the Rebuild SoCal Partnership, are here with us virtually today to provide an overview and an update on economic development and job creation resulting from the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. So with that introduction, I will turn it over to our panel.
Kiana, we can't hear you.
Thank you. Apologies. Kiana Valentine, Madam Chair and Commissioners, good afternoon. I'm Kiana Valentine, the Executive Director of Transportation California, a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization whose management and labor organizations provide for more than 200,000 California jobs. We advocate for balanced policy solutions and funding solutions to improve our multimodal transportation system, create and sustain living wage jobs, grow our economy, and enhance our overall quality of life in the Golden State. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here today with my colleagues from the California Alliance for Jobs and Rebuild SoCal Partnership to discuss with you how SB1 is helping the state's economy, particularly during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and the well-paying jobs it's providing to tens of thousands of Californians each year. The timing of this presentation could not be better, as later today the Commission is prepared to take action to adopt $2 billion worth of multimodal transportation programs, whose projects are valued at over $8 billion. And 100% of these competitive grant programs are made possible by SB1. I want to kick off our presentation with a brief history of how we got to where we are today. There's been a lot of healthy, robust debate recently as to the intersection of transportation funding and policy, climate change, equity, and many other laudable state goals. And how we can use our existing transportation resources to maximize our investments for the achievement of multiple benefits. And without a doubt, these are very timely and very critical conversations to be having. But at the same time, as a transportation advocate, we cannot forget that SB1 and its investments into our multimodal transportation system and its legacy were a product of multi-year bipartisan negotiations and thoughtfully crafted policy decisions subject to significant stakeholder and public input. The legislature considered the variety of multimodal needs and legislated according to its priorities and goals. Fundamentally, SB 1 was born out of the need to increase funding for basic maintenance, rehabilitation, and safety needs on our existing multimodal transportation system. By 2017, the state, cities, and counties had a combined 10-year, $137 billion funding shortfall. I've said that number so many times, and it still never gets to be any less amazing, to adequately maintain the existing state highway system, local streets and roads, bridges, and other essential components like culverts, sidewalks, bike lanes, etc. And that figure, that $137 billion figure, does not account for the transit rehabilitation and maintenance needs in the state. It did not account for multimodal expansion projects, including transit and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. It didn't include for other capital projects to support the movements of goods, services, and people and keep our economy growing. The list goes on. That figure did not account for the funding necessary to implement regional SCSs so that we can meet our climate goals. And it did not include the needs so that we can adapt and mitigate for the impacts of climate change on our existing highways and local streets and roads. So in short, the needs were immense. Moreover, the impacts of our crumbling infrastructure were being felt by our residents in every community across the state. Safety concerns were growing. After a period of decline, we saw fatalities and serious injuries on the rise for motorists and particularly bicyclists and pedestrians. Their rates of injury and fatality were going up. Motorists were paying on average $762 per person annually in additional car maintenance and repairs due to poor infrastructure. And perhaps the worst, at least from my personal perspective, people, goods, services were sitting in stifling, soul-sucking, air-polluting congestion. So after years of sustained education, public hearings, bipartisan negotiations, we, and when I say we, I mean, yes, of course, the transportation industry, John, Michael, myself, so many others, but a broader coalition of the state, cities, counties, regions, the business community, environmental community, and stakeholders everywhere in between, because it was such a huge coalition effort, successfully passed the carefully crafted, balanced, and multimodal investment package that is SB 1 today. As you guys are very familiar with, as a result, SB 1 is going to generate approximately $5.4 billion annually, and that's a minimum number, I should note, because as the annual inflationary adjustments occur so that we don't lose purchasing power on the investment, those numbers are going to grow into perpetuity. That's another point that we want to make sure to make too. We often talk about SB 1 in a 10-year time horizon because it's easy for analytical purposes to wrap our mind about the what we're going to get. But that SB 1 does not expire. SB 1 is here to stay. And it's going to do and is already doing so many positive things for Californians and its residents. While SB 1 is absolutely about rebuilding our infrastructure, our surface transportation infrastructure, which is the backbone of our economy and the right-of-way for more than just cars, right? We know transit buses, bicyclists, pedestrians need roads and sidewalks and all the associated infrastructure to move. SB 1 is so much more, and this was done on purpose. SB 1 doubled the state's investment in transit, and it more than doubled its investment into the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure through the active transportation program, but also through its investment in local streets and roads, cities and counties are already improving bike and ped facilities on their own, but SB 1 also requires them to do that in all cases where cost effective and feasible. And as evidenced by the program of projects you will be considering shortly, SB 1 invests in a variety of mobility options, sustainability, safety, equity, and accessibility, all while fixing our roads and infrastructure and creating jobs and supporting our economy. As I mentioned, SB 1 was a bipartisan measure that invests in a variety of modes and programs to reflect various transportation needs across the state, from the north to the south, rural to urban, and inland to coastal. We feel it is incredibly imperative that the framework of SB1 be maintained so that we can meet the many goals that the legislature codified in SB1 just a few short years ago. And to put a finer point as I wrap up my part of the presentation on this matter, we cannot, for those of us that were so deeply involved in the Prop 6 campaign, forget that voters sent Sacramento a message when they rejected Proposition 6 by 57% in 2018, which of course was the initiative that sought to repeal SB1. During the campaign, which Michael, John, and I worked intimately on, research and polling data made clear that regional transportation needs differed. Residents were familiar with these differences, and they cared about different transportation choices. And the beauty of SB1, and this was again done on purpose, and the reason we think voters ultimately supported SB1 was its flexible approach to solving a variety of transportation infrastructure challenges. SB1, lastly, SB1's value and importance has been further proven during the ongoing pandemic, as we've already discussed to some degree. The programs the CTC are approving today are going to create and sustain jobs and economic activity during a time where much of the economy is shuttered and getting worse by the day. Without SB1, our transportation revenues would be taking much more of a significant hit due to the pandemic. For those of us that watched and witnessed the CTC cutting $1.5 billion in programs in 2016, that is something I know I wish to never live through again. SB1 broadened our tax base, right? We're not 100% reliant on the gas tax anymore. There's other taxes and fees. And so the hit due to COVID-19's impacts on travel behavior was less. And then finally, those inflationary adjustments helped us mitigate, I think, some of the worst of the cuts that could have occurred. So in closing, before I pass it off to Michael and forward to the next slide, I want to acknowledge our many, many virtuous goals in California. And one of them must continue to be investing in our infrastructure, creating middle-class jobs, and supporting a vibrant economy, economic opportunity, and upwards mobility. So thank you so much for having me today. Over to you, Michael. And next slide.
Thank you, Kiana. I wanted to talk a little bit on the background about this SB1 economic analysis before I go into the numbers. And as Kiana said, SB1 is something that's on the books for perpetuity. Now, this analysis was done roughly in the fall of 2017, so about 3 years ago, and really just examined 10 years, the first 10 years of SB1, starting with the 2017-18 year, which was not necessarily a full revenue year. But if you look at the first full revenue year in 18-19, we're looking at roughly $4 billion in transportation revenue. If you look out 10 years into the future, you're at a number that's actually around $7 billion of transportation revenue. So the number we use is the 5.2 billion, that's the average over 10 years. And so all of these numbers are essentially looking at that increased scale where you start out at a lower baseline and then continue to escalate over those years. And so what we used as part of the methodology for this study, we commissioned the American Road and Transportation Builders. They've done a lot of these studies for other states, and they're using, importantly in a transparency sense, like publicly available data. They're actually looking at the numbers put out by the CTC and Caltrans in terms of their spending and how they're allocating those dollars, and then taking those numbers of government investment and then using a modeling system that then creates these economic outputs. And so the modeling systems they're using are generally things that are widely used and put out both by the government and used in the private sector. Things like this, RIMS2 is a regional input-output modeling system that's put together by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. That was part of the methodology. IMPLAN was used, which is a very commonly used economic modeling software. And what we did in this economic analysis was look both at the statewide numbers, but then also broke everything down into a regional analysis based off of different regions. And what we ended up also analyzing is not just what this means in the construction sector, but looking across 17 other economic sectors that are important to California, essentially everything from transportation and goods movement, to healthcare, tourism, entertainment, all different aspects of the economy were analyzed. And so where you have the most direct economic impact is in the transportation sector. Obviously, about 25% of all the jobs that are being accounted for SB1 are coming directly in the construction sector. But the other great impact of these transportation investments are in increasing the economic capacity of other economic sectors, allowing them to operate more efficiently and then grow their own economic activity as a result of that. So I think it's taking a big macro look at it. And so when you see these job year numbers, for instance, the estimate is about 68,000 job years on an annualized basis are supported through SB1. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's 62,000 people who are working on SB1 job project. It means that both including the transportation investment and direct construction activity, and then also the ancillary induced activity around those transportation investments is how you really calculate this. And so you can see the analysis created a number for the entire gross state product, essentially the GDP, but considered for California. And so the number is actually higher than what you're seeing in terms of the investment. And that's because of this induced activity, where the increased gross state product is averaging $5.7 billion per year. Well, you're at a $5.2 billion average investment. You're actually generating additional economic capacity outside of that. So I think that's one of the multiplier effects that you see in transportation that really increases the economic benefits far more than other type of spending that government does, because it does have this broad impact across all sectors of the economy. And I think one of the other things to look at is the wage numbers. In construction activity, the largest single line item, of course, is the labor costs, and that's because it's a very labor intensive type of work. What that does mean, though, is that a great deal of these dollars are being spent on wages, supporting families, and then those workers are then able to pay their mortgages, make their car payments, go to the grocery store, essentially live their lives in a way that's also generating additional economic activity in their own communities. So that's how the dollars get spread, as you see that, of roughly the $5.2 billion, 3.3 of this is being allocated towards wages annually. So I think that's a very important aspect of the numbers that should be, always thought of in terms of what we're spending. Is not just like government bureaucracy, right? This is turning into actual economic activity, and about 2/3 of that dollar is going into wages that ultimately support working families in California. And I think the final point that I want to make is related to the revenue that this generates as well. This, the $5 billion in transportation revenue is generating back towards local and state payrolls, almost $750 million annually. So this economic activity also has the ancillary benefit of creating more dollars and providing more revenue for local, state, and federal government. And so, in closing, I just want to point out that the Alliance and the Partnership for Jobs and Transportation California, we all work very closely together. And one of the things that we're working on right now is an update to this SB1 economic analysis, hopefully having it publicly available here in the first quarter of 2021. But what we're doing for the first time is looking at the overall state spend, the federal, local, state dollars, all of it, and are hoping to create what we think will be the first comprehensive look at what is the economic impacts of all of California's transportation and transit dollars. And then we're going to be creating a new study similarly structured to this existing one that will be then put online. It'll be a publicly available resource for all of you folks on the Transportation Commission, and then also for local and state elected officials. And when we have this data put out there, the idea is that we'll have it searchable either by county or municipality. We'll have you be able to break it down and see kind of how many dollars are being spent in your different communities, different parts of the state. The numbers will be regionalized in a way that makes sense and not just a one-size-fits-all mechanic. So hopefully, it's a very ambitious project. We've been working on it now since middle of last year, or actually middle of this year. But we'll get it done here and get this available. And I think this will be a very important resource for both CTC, but also, as I said, elected officials and looking at what the actual economic benefits are to their individual districts. John, and next up, I'll turn it over to John, Southern California Partnership.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I'm, first of all, good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. John Hakel, and I am the Executive Director of a group called Rebuild SoCal. We represent 2,750 contractors, 3 great unions, the carpenters, laborers, and operators. And the reason this was built was to make sure that we work in tandem along with Michael and Kiana on the need for continuing infrastructure funding, that the contractors and the unions in Southern California said we've got to keep pressure on the actual legislature so they know that, as Kiana said, that number was gigantic, but we need to keep fighting the fight and educating the public. Having said that, and I'll go back again to what Kiana just said, Prop 6 fails and SB 1 rolls, and we were thrilled of the process of having that money and get it going. So about 48 hours later, I get calls from the transportation agencies in Southern California and several legislators who said, hey, John, wasn't one of your goals is to continue to educate the public and public officials on the need? What are you going to do? So we sat down with our media team and started to look at areas where we believe the public need, firsthand, how their SB1 dollars are truly being spent. We have currently 10 videos in our actual library. I believe you're going to see one now, and then I'll just do a little follow-up at the end. But this is what we're doing. We're going into the communities where SB1 funds are truly needed to take care of just roads that are in really bad shape, to make sure it's a safe area. But also, what does that do for the community? And what does that do for the safety of the folks traveling these roads? So if you want to click on the video, I would greatly appreciate it. And I'll do a quick end.
We are doing reconstruction of Prairie between Manchester and Imperial. New concrete, new ramps, tree wells, as well as resurfacing of the asphalt section. This place is really popping now.
We're in Inglewood, right across the street from the Forum and the brand new stadium that's going up for the Rams and the Chargers. The new road's going to help the traffic flow coming in and out of the new stadium. It's going to look like a brand new street.
What I love about working right here in the city is this home, this Inglewood. I've been in Inglewood for about 8 years now. Not only can I help build the city, which brings in jobs, brings in more people, brings in money.
I think that Inglewood is doing a great job with the new streets, the new palm trees. Everything is looking beautiful. The streets are smooth. It makes easy access. For a small business like mine, the improvements really make a difference because people want to be able to have easy access to the places that they're going.
Now, I love that we're helping small businesses. Like right here, we have Bourbon Street Fish Market because of the money that I'm able to get and bring in and help recycle in my community. Recycling money in the community is very important.
My pride in my work shows in the actual work itself outside, and also too in my crew. My crew shows the same pride as I do. I believe this is a great project for the community of Inglewood. It just gives me a peace of mind going home that I earn my pay for that day.
So yeah, I do take a lot of pride in what I do. The whole crew does. We've all been doing this for a long time. Most of us have at least 20 years experience in this. It takes a while to learn the trade. You can't just step in and know what you're doing.
I have 2 kids. One is 13. His name is Jalen Bradley. The work ethic that I've learned on the job, I'm kind of able to instill that in him, getting him up early in the morning, letting him understand how to work for something, knowing that there's a better life. I love my kids.
Part of this SB1 project includes handicap ramps. It's going to be a lot safer for walking and driving in this area.
It's great that the sidewalks are wider. It makes it easier for the elderly as well as the handicapped to travel along the sidewalks.
I'm getting paid by my contractor, and that same money I can dump inside my city, which can help with homes, roads getting paved, bring in more stores, bring in more places where you can shop, where you can eat.
There's so many people around that need good food, and we're here to serve them. And we're looking for a whole bunch of new customers.
Our company, Sully Miller, has a very good safety program that's been essential to keeping us safe and getting home every day.
The rejuvenation of Prairie Avenue is great for business, and this type of investment is great for the entire community.
We definitely need a place for working man, blue collar guys. We're the guys that get everything done out here. You know, we're doing all the hard work. Once we get a road done, it's going to last 15, 20 years, but there are so many roads here in California that need to be resurfaced or completely redone. As a first responder, the street pavement would increase the safety of our officers as they travel to emergency calls along Prairie Avenue. And that'll be a great thing for the whole community.
It's a difficult time in our country right now. The union teaches us brotherhood, that we're all brothers, that we all work together for a common goal. Something America needs right now.
When you invest in infrastructure, you're investing in the future. The future of Inglewood is bright.
Thank you so much. Does that complete your presentation? This is a wonderful video.
Let me just close with this is just one of 10 of them. And I think it should be noted that when we do these, we want to make sure that the public knows, and the type of response we've gotten back from our own media sources say that the public is recognizing this. On top of that, we have sent these to the local legislators wherever these videos are. We're getting calls back from them saying thank you, because they're taking these now on Zoom calls in their community to show them that the money that they're paying through a gas tax, let's call it, can really bring back what they're looking for, quality work, safe work. And then when you have these are really, truly great careers. They're not jobs, they're careers. So we're helping to do whatever we can in the more global setting, using the tax dollars wisely, refurbishing where it needs to be refurbished, and then also help making sure that those folks that have jobs continue to have this work. So I do thank you. For allowing us to use the money that you're allocating out, and we look forward to doing more of these.
Thank you so much. This is incredible. And we have no public comment, we see, but we do have commission comments. And I'd like to start with Commissioner Eager.
Yes, first of all, I just want to say great video. That's wonderful. Obviously, in my other life, economic development, job development is a priority of mine. So thank you all for the work that you're doing. I did have a quick question for Michael. I think in your presentation, you talked about the current economic impact study that you have right now. And I know you're going to get deeper and you're going to get into where it's going and how it's going. But did you say you already have it broken out by region, the economic impact?
So we structured the new study the same as this, where we did both the statewide analysis and then looked at the 17 different economic sectors, and then went another layer deeper where we did a 5 different regional analysis. So we did one for the Bay Area, one for the Sacramento North State, one for Central Valley, one for the Los Angeles region, and then one for the San Diego region. So basically, kind of bifurcating the state into the major regions, and then doing a sub-analysis of the state numbers, kind of breaking those down regionally. And so we've structured this new study in that same regard, with the same kind of regional breakdowns, and not just a server.
And so the current numbers that you have broken out by that, where would I find that?
Well, we have for this existing study, staff has, you can find, you can Google SB1 economic analysis ARTBA. It's, but they have it on their website. The new study is still being worked on, and we're probably, several months away from being able to publicize that, but it's underway, right?
Okay, that'd be great if you could send that to us as soon as that's completed.
Absolutely. When we do, there will be an announcement we'll make sure that it's well broadly known that it's out there. We think that this resource, as I said, will be something that a lot of folks will be wanting to utilize, on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we really appreciate the time you took to amplify the work that's being done through into all these other items. So Kiana, John, thank you for your report today.
Thank you for your work as well.
Okay. With that, we are going to take a short break, and we're going to come back at 4:10 and other important items that we know many of you have been waiting. So we will join you back at 4:10. Thank you.